I will tell you this now. The day that you post that you bought the 1942 soundtrack is the day I schedule an intervention for you.
Shoot the Core Cast. Welcome to Shoot the Core Cast, the official companion podcast to the RF Generation Shmup Club. This is the family-friendly shmup-themed podcast that has the balls to capture your heart. From RF Generation, I'm MetalFRO, also known as Game Boy Guru, and my co-pilot on this mission is...
Addicted, also known as Addicted to Shmups.
And we have with us a guest today, a longtime participant in the Shmup Club, and first-time guest to the podcast, Zoydo. Welcome.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for the invitation, and hello to everyone out there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for asking me, yeah.
Yeah, so before we kick things off, just so you all know, if you want to connect with us, you can follow us on Twitter at ShootCoreCast. You can follow me directly on Twitter at GameBoyGuru. You can find all the links to the relevant podcast places, such as the various feeds, and our Redbubble shop, where you can buy t-shirts at linktr.ee/shootthecorecast. And if you would, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your preferred platform. You can also join the RF Generation Discord channel, and that's linked from the front page of rfgeneration.com. We do have a dedicated Shoot the Corecast topic in there where we talk shmups, post commentary and screenshots or photos of our high scores for the games that we're playing, and just talk shooting games in general. And because I streamed the Shmup Club Game of the Month multiple times during the course of the month, if you'd like to watch that and come interact there, you can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/GuruGameBoy.
And the RF Generation community is also great. It allows you to interact with us as well as find out, if you've got 50 copies of Deep Space Waifu you just forgot about. I'm guilty of that as well. I've used it to keep track of my collection, and it's one of the most robust databases out there. I mean, haven't you found yourself in the same situation, Game Boy, where you just say, "Oh my goodness, I own Deep Space Waifu Unlimited. I shouldn't buy this."
I can't say that I have found myself in that situation, nor do I wish that on anyone. But I have
one day.
But I have occasionally picked up a duplicate of something. So, yeah, the database can help you save yourself from that situation. And the forum is also a good place with some good discussion and fun articles on the front page.
Yeah, if you find out you accidentally own that second copy of Darius Rucker.
Well, that's all right. The database can hold your hand so that you don't do that. All right. Well, let's get started with our question of the month that I threw out on Twitter. So, G-Darius allows you to capture an enemy and use it against its own side. What other games do you enjoy that allow you to turn the tables on the enemy like that? And actually, funny enough, Zoydo, you were the first one to respond, so I'll let you explain your answer.
Yeah, it seems like I'm the only one that didn't think about a shmup right away. The first thing that came to my mind was Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't know. I also thought about what's the name of the alien game? The first thing that came to my mind was hacking enemies, and Horizon Zero Dawn just came to my mind, and I really enjoyed playing it. So that's a game where I took advantage of the possibility to hack enemies and let them attack other enemies, and yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn yet, but it's on my list. I have a copy on PS4 that I got cheap. I just haven't got through enough of the backlog to pop that one in yet.
Well, you need to stop playing Breath of the Wild for the 500th time, and then you can play it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really one of my favorite open-world adventure games, and one of my favorite games for PlayStation 4.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it eventually. But yeah, like Addicted said, I am in fact addicted to Breath of the Wild.
I'm looking forward to play Horizon Forbidden West, but I need to get my hands on a PS5 first.
Oh, yes.
We saw one of those mythical beasts out and around at a pawn shop. It was $800.
What?
Yeah.
$800.
Yeah, it was crazy. At Venu Shmup says, it's not exactly like that, but I like the mechanic in G-Darius when you steal enemies' fire shot. So cool. Yeah, we covered G-Darius here a while back, and that is definitely one of the big hooks in that game, is the ability to sort of take your firepower from enemies. Now, that is a little bit of a risk-reward, of course, and also a bit of a crapshoot, because sometimes the weapons that you get from an enemy are not great, and even when they're fully powered up, if you've used the TOZ system to steal that power up multiple times, sometimes it's still not great. So, yeah, you definitely have to learn which power-ups are actually worth using.
Yeah, in that game, the mullet power up beats them all, but it's extremely hard to get.
Which one?
The mullet?
Oh. Yes. Yes.
Can you say Guy or us?
Jamie Bunker is too powerful for us all.
Indeed. Our next comment comes to us from Danmaku Man G. Macross Scramble Valkyrie. Zaxxon Mother Base 3000 and Macross, when you stop shooting, appears a force field around the ship. Getting close to most enemies lets you use it as an invincible option. In Zaxxon, it's the base of its gameplay. You jump on enemies and hack them to use them as firepower for extra hits.
Huh.
Was this the game you were looking for earlier, Zoydo? The Zaxxon?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Zaxxon Mother Base 3000 just sound. I mean, that's too good a name for us to let go. We'll have to add that into our list.
Yeah, unfortunately, being a 32X game, it'll be a little bit less accessible. But I definitely want to. I definitely want to play that one at some point.
That's true. That's why you unleash the power of the Mister.
Yes, very much so.
At 32 Mbit says, probably cheating to say Darius Gaiden, huh? I wouldn't call it cheating, because Darius Gaiden is basically the game that came up with the idea of capturing mini-bosses. So
Yeah,
that's valid, I think.
I tweeted back at 32 Mbit and said, absolutely not. It's fair game.
Yeah.
At SPM_NSW says, can't think of many. Gallica could be the first to introduce this, although I never found it that useful with the extra-large hitbox. Takumi games also come to mind. Gigawing and Mars Matrix are really satisfying, the latter a bit more brutal than satisfying, maybe. LOL.
Our next comment comes to us from Hakurusai. Someone already said it, but I want to stress that Gigawing's flagship parry is one of the most satisfying mechanics I've ever experienced in a shmup, both from the scoring and damage part. Sometimes it feels like playing tennis, and it is darn satisfying. I love it. I apologize, I had to edit out a little bit here to keep it family friendly.
That's alright.
Another one that came to my mind was Trigger Hard Exalica, that lets you capture enemies and throw them back at other enemies, like slingshot-wise. That's a pretty cool feature too.
Yeah, that's a fun mechanic. At Big Core MK2 says, those of us that remember and pray for a sequel that will never come. Einhander on the PSX. The manipulator arm mechanic that lets you use enemy weapons was just plain fun. My favorite was double flash cannons. Yeah, and for me, in terms of shmups, this is the one that came to mind first, other than the game we're discussing today, because, yeah, there's so much versatility with it that you can use any of the weapons that enemies drop. And, of course, that's how you pick up new weapons or how you refill ammo and so forth. And, of course, we've already covered Einhander on the podcast early on, but, yeah, definitely one that comes to mind. And, of course, I can't, for myself, I can't go through this segment without also mentioning Breath of the Wild, since it was brought up already, because there's a lot you can do in that regard in that game as well. There are enemy camps that have explosive barrels. They will try to throw those barrels at you. If they do, you can use one of your abilities to freeze that barrel in midair and then shoot at it with an arrow or something so that it will go back at the enemies and hit the ground and explode. You can also try and sneak into an enemy camp and sometimes steal their weaponry so that you can use it against them. So lots of ways to do that kind of thing and turn the tables on enemies in creative ways in that game.
Right. The game I was looking for was Alien Isolation for PS4. It lets you hack the droids and so that they attack each other, and that was the one I was thinking about before.
That's an excellent choice.
And Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order also has a hacking mechanics. That's nice too.
Ah, cool. I've heard good things about that game.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, for me, I would have to say Chabadi. Sorry, my Japanese pronunciation skills are as good as Mark MSX. Everyone knows this, but Chadabai Gaishi, or the table flipping game from Taito. Literally flip the tables on you, and if you're looking for extra credit, Othello for the NES.
Oh, sure.
Everyone's played that game and wondered, why am I playing this?
Nice. Yeah, I was trying to think of the name of it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's another more recent indie shmup that it's an auto-scrolling game, and it's a shmup in a sense, but it's sort of like tennis, where you're in space and you have these kind of, high-tech tennis racket things, and you can sort of whack enemy bullets back at them.
Well, if you use those criteria and you use your imagination, a pawn could satisfy those requirements.
Sure. Yeah, I just can't remember what the game is called, but it looked kind of charming.
Well, I mean, you could, if you were using something like that, you could also use a game such as Risk System in order to say that, right, you're using your enemy's bullets on there and using that back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that would count.
And isn't Shield Maiden another great doujin based upon that type of mechanic?
Yeah, Shield Maid MX, it kind of does in a way. I mean, you're not reflecting bullets back at enemies, but you are using their bullets against them in the sense that you use the shield to collect their bullets so that you can power up your own ship, therefore making you more powerful and more easily able to take out each new wave of enemies. So, yeah.
And, yeah, the other thing I was thinking about is, correct me, my memory is hazy here, but isn't this also a similar mechanic to The Day We Fought Space? Doesn't that use the same thing?
I want to say one of the weapons in The Day We Fought Space might allow you to do something similar to Triggerheart, where you either capture an enemy or reflect it back at another. Yeah, I don't remember for sure.
Here's one game that I'm certain you could sort of put under there. How about Pokemon? Capturing the enemy, turn your tables, and use their stuff against them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Alrighty, well, thank you everyone who sent in an answer. I know I kind of threw the question out a little bit on the late side, but it was good to get a few good responses, and so thank you everyone who bothered to write in one. So let's move on to our focus shot, which is kind of our year-long ongoing discussion about a game. And of course, for 2022, that is Mushihime-sama. And much like last month, I didn't have a lot of time to play, although I did put a little bit in, and it seems like I'm beginning to build some muscle memory with this game, because when I went back and played it again, after it had been a little bit since I'd played, I managed to get through Stage 1 without any problems, and I got through Stage 2 on my second attempt of getting through that, and actually managed to no-miss both Stage 1 and Stage 2 on one of my runs, and got into toward the end of Stage 3, and might have actually got my new PB. So I was pretty pleased with that. But yeah, it feels like I'm beginning to build some muscle memory with this game, to where even when I haven't played it in a couple of weeks or so, I can come back to it and remember a lot of what it is that I need to do in order to get through at least the early part of the game.
Good. I'm looking forward to your blindfolded run on Shmup Slam 16.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, but I feel like, at least from a practice standpoint, it's going to be easier for me to come back to this game again and again, so that I can quickly find a groove and then jump back into wherever it is that I need to practice.
Yeah, it's, in some ways you could say that shmups are like golf. They are a mental game, and being in the right mindset goes a long way in order to figure out the patterns and playing your best. I would also say, at least for me, I found out that playing on a smaller screen seems to help, because I tried playing on my 50-inch TV here, and it was disastrous, to say the least, versus playing on 24-inch monitor. It's so much better. I don't know if you've had that same experience.
A little bit. I mean, my setup here that I've got my new TV. It's a 65-inch, and then I've got my old 55-inch TV set up in Tate next to it. And so that's what I use for OBS when I stream and things. But sometimes I will occasionally play a game in Tate on that screen, and it can be a little bit overwhelming just because of how large it is, even though I'm 7-8 feet away from it. Yeah, I think you might be right. When I play it, I certainly played a lot better on my regular TV, even though it's 65-inch. The area that I'm looking at is about 2/3 the height and width, or the 2/3 the height of my 55-inch TV, maybe even less. So yeah, with that more compact view or smaller view of the playfield, I can take more of it in quickly and get a better sense of what I'm looking at, and bullets and enemy locations and things. So yeah, I think there's probably a sweet spot in terms of what the size is of a good screen for vertical STG. and I don't know what that is, but I would imagine that it's probably closer to what I see on my regular TV than on this giant 55-inch vertical monitor.
The way that I sort of described it and asked you the question, I sort of jokingly thought it sounds like the good test for a school science experiment, right? An elementary school science experiment. Does playing shmups on a smaller screen impact your play?
There you
But
go.
Mom, it's for school.
Exactly.
And science.
So maybe when your son's a little older, you can have him do that as a science project.
There we go.
And then we can report on the podcast. What about you, Zoydo? Have you played Mushi much?
I haven't played last month, but I played a few runs in March, I guess, in arrange mode, which is the most fun mode for me, I think. But yeah, I haven't played since then, so there's not much worth speaking about.
Sure. Well, so I'm curious. I haven't spent much time with arrange mode other than when I first bought the digital version on the Switch. I messed around with it for a few minutes, but I haven't really gone back to it since I've been concentrating on original, Mushi 1.0. So I'm curious as to what you think makes arrange the most fun.
I really can't tell right away. It's been too long. I can't pick the differences between the modes right now. I need to get back at it and play some more runs. I didn't play Orange much before. When the game came out last year, I guess I played a lot of version 1.5, but I haven't much playtime in Orange mode, so I really can't point out what's different from the other modes.
Yeah, from the discussion I've seen online, it seems like 1.5 and arrange kind of jockey back and forth as the favorite, or what people find to be the most fun. So it'll be interesting going forward to put a little bit of time into those modes and get a sense of what makes them different from the original, and see if we can figure out what it is that people think is more fun about those modes than the original arcade release.
It has an auto bomb feature, and I guess more bullets, but also more cancelling, but I can't tell for sure.
I wonder, do you know if the auto bomb does the thing where when you auto bomb, it empties your whole stock?
I guess that's the case, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So definitely risk reward there.
Yep.
Which I know some people enjoy those elements. Okay, cool. Anything else to say on Mushi this month, Addicted?
Other than I need to play more as well. I hit the battleship bug as I was playing and trying to get to that last stage of there, and did a couple runs of stage 4. Just as you had experienced the first 2 stages, which one seemed pretty fast or now seem pretty tame. But that's typical cave, right? You build up your expectations on stages 1 and 2, only to crush them with stage 3.
Yeah, I know that.
So
stage 3 is usually where it ends for me too.
Yeah, it's a bit of a run killer.
Yeah.
Yep, I was excited to see, and we should mention this in the news section coming next, that the ports for Limited Run was doing for, I saw Espeleta 2 and what the heck was the other one? Oh, Espeleta 2, they were doing what's the other cave game that came out? DDP Res, right?
Yeah.
Was that right? So many acronyms, I swear. It's like DDP, REDB. It's almost like it's getting to the point of Dance Dance Revolution, right? DDR Ultramax, and but there was that, and they announced another shmup too that was coming, didn't they? Oh, R2. They're porting the Super Nintendo version of Red Ranger to the Switch.
Yeah.
They thought they'd start out, with the big stuff first, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah, so I guess that's a good segue to get us into shmup news. So, first, right out of the gate, I got to mention, because it was kind of what everyone says was the game was shadow dropped. Basically, a new game called Drainus was released on Steam with no warning, no fanfare, no notice of any kind. But it's from developers Team Ladybug, who did the Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth game, as well as Toho Luna Nights, both of which are a sort of Metroidvania style. And as far as I know, this is the team's first shoot-'em-up, and generally speaking, it has been well received, although a lot of folks are saying that the game is quite easy, and really the only challenge comes when you beat the game and unlock the harder modes. One of them is, I think it's called Ridiculous Mode or something like that, and then the game gets much more challenging and a little bit more in line with the traditional difficult shooting game. But it definitely looks cool, has a little bit of a mechanic that I think is similar to Devil Engine, where you can sort of cancel bullets.
If nothing else, it has people talking about STGs again. I see a couple of... I saw a couple Japanese Twitch streamers trying to beat the hardest modes and do speed runs of it. So it's definitely got an audience out there, and it'll be interesting to see it gain some traction and gain a level of following. Maybe it'll be done at Summer Games Done Quick. I'm really liking these doujin games that are coming out. Drainus, and then a couple months ago, Sofstar.
Yes.
Which I think is also now getting physical release. Really awesome to see that people are giving us a care and attention for every single one of these, where it looks like, Atari 2600 game. We see these excellent and well thought out and well loved new doujin games. So definitely keep it up and keep reaching for the moon. As I love seeing stuff like this and playing new stuff. I don't care if it's a finger that shoots lasers or if it's a Neko Navy. Keep at them.
Right. Yeah, if you look at the Steam page for Drainus, you can see there's been someone who's been consistently streaming it here lately, so it's definitely getting some attention.
Oh, also, if you're in the U.S., Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth, I don't know what the heck is going on, but if you see a copy out there that's a U.S. copy, definitely pick it up for the Switch and PS5. Those seem to be staying consistent in like $60 to $70.
Wow.
Because Red Art Games did produce maybe couple of thousand copies or something of that game there. I want to say it'd be long before Radical Reggie or Metal Jesus or somebody on there puts it up there as a hidden gem before price increases and we see it sell for lots of money on Wada Games.
Yeah.
But it's Deedlit's not bad. Wonder Labyrinth, Toho Luna Nights. We were talking about DDR and all the different flavors that they have. That doesn't even compare to Toho. I'm losing track on what the heck they could do for Toho. It wouldn't surprise me if one day there's a Toho Monopoly game or Toho Scrabble and stuff. It's just out there. What is Toho Luna Nights? Was that the shooting game, the one where they ride each other, the one where they play a board game? Which one is this?
No, Toho Luna Nights is a Metroidvania style, and it actually looks pretty cool. So I might have to check that one out.
Oh, sounds good. We can. It's Metroidvania. Oh, there you go. You got 2 games now. No, 3. Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, and now you have Toho Luna Nights.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have enough of these type that we can start calling them Toho-vanias.
Maybe at least we wouldn't have to pay Jeremy Parrish a fee every time we say the word Metroidvania anymore.
That's true.
All right, we next news snippet is a new Japanese doujin shooter, Eyes Plus, just dropped on June 10th from developer publisher Takayaka. Made with the Shmup Creator tool, it uses vector graphics like an early arcade titles, think along the lines of Star Wars Arcade or the
like
infamous
Space Duel.
Tempest. Oh, Space Duel. But a Danmaku shooting game. Other game from Takayama is a River City Ransom Kunio-kun style adventure game beat up called Yume Core. I swear that you put River City Ransom Kunio-kun style game in there. That's like a tongue twister. Say that over and over again.
Yeah, and this one just dropped on June 10th, and it looks very interesting. And a lot of the early feedback I've seen across the shooting game Discord communities has been positive from people who have been playing it. So it definitely looks neat. Think about playing a Danmaku style game on a Vectrex or on a Vector arcade machine. Like I said, an early game like Space Duel or something like that, multicolored Vector art. It looks neat. So I'm definitely going to have to give that one a try.
When you think back upon this, with the type of technology that we have now with LCDs, where we're getting to the point where beyond high definition, whatever marketing term you want to run with this. But I remember there being a lot of buzz around the time that the Atari Classics collection, the 1, 2, and 3 came over to the PS4, because the monitors and stuff were finally good enough that they could do a pretty accurate representation of what a vector monitor looked like. Not only that, we now have titles or have a proven history of STGs looking really well with vector style graphics. Think back to Geometry Wars.
Mm-hmm.
That would be one that I would love to do again. So I am definitely looking forward to playing this game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even with OLED screens, you still can't quite replicate the glow that you get from a true vector monitor. But it's still cool to see people using that style and trying to do new things with it.
Yeah, I'd say with all the monitors or TVs you have around you, you're probably doing a pretty good job of emulating that glow.
Something like that.
Yeah, another new Japanese doujin title released for free is Open Arms Maximum for developer Kanzaki, another Danmaku-style shooter with a high-energy soundtrack. Kanzaki also recently released System 45 for another shooter with simple line art. I played System 45.
Oh yeah?
But I didn't hear about Open Arms Maximum.
Yeah, Open Arms Maximum just came out within the last 2 weeks, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so it looks good. It seems like the sound effects might be a bit simplistic, but from the trailer, the soundtrack was pretty rockin', and the game looks solid. So definitely have to try it, and it is free to download. I won't be able to have the link in the show notes, but if you just search for Kanzaki Open Arms Maximum, you'll be able to find the page and check out the site. And Kanzaki is very much a shooting game fan, because if you go to the Kanzaki's website, there are a ton of links to different shooting games and sort of rating and recommending them and doing short reviews and screenshots. So Kanzaki is obviously a big STG fan.
Cool. Gotta check this one out.
Yeah, I'll have to link you to the page. Next up, at this point, I'm sure we're all familiar with Capcom Arcade Stadium, and now Capcom Arcade Second Stadium has been announced. It's slated for release July 21st. The free game this time around is going to be the sort of auto-scrolling platformer / shooting game Sun. And then, at this point, the only other shmups in this collection that have been announced are 1943 Kai, Eco Fighters, and Last Duel. And I think there are 50 games in this bundle. there's a lot of fighting games in it too, like the Darkstalkers and Night Warriors series, and several Street Fighter games and other things. But yeah, I'm glad to see Last Duel finally getting a release. The previous time that we had that available to us was on the Capcom Classics Collection releases from the PS2 and Xbox era, and then of course the two Capcom Classics Collection releases on PSP. And it's actually fun to play that game and the other Vertical games on the PSP that way, because it rotates the screen and you hold your PSP vertically and then the controls switch to match. So that's a kind of a neat way to play it. But I'm glad that it'll finally be getting another console release. Same with Eco Fighters, and I'm guessing, I want to say that Eco Fighters, like Forgotten Worlds, allows you to more finely aim your fire, if I remember correctly. So I'm guessing
with that Einhander arm.
I'm guessing they'll have an analog stick component to that as well. And then, of course, 1943 Kai. It's cool that that's getting a release.
If I remember correctly, it doesn't have an analog stick, but I think you actually hold one button to rotate it and press it. I think it's more, I want to say like Forgotten Worlds in some ways, where you stop. The way that they did the Genesis port, maybe what I'm thinking about, where you use it and then you hold one button to stay stuck in place. It's been a while since I've played it, but I think that's the way that works.
Okay.
And by been a while, I mean like 20 plus years for me, but it's all right.
Oh, yeah.
Also, did they have more Street Fighter 2 ports on this one? I think I saw it, but maybe I'm misremembering. I swear Street Fighter and Street Fighter 2 in particular have probably been ported more times than Super Mario Brothers at this point.
Yeah, I think Hyper Fighting might be in this collection. I'm not 100% sure.
Alright. Sega has announced the Mega Drive Mini 2 console, and the lineup currently includes Thunder Force 4, Sylphid, and the M2 custom recreation of Fantasy Zone for the Mega Drive hardware. The unit will be styled after the Mega Drive 2 model and slated for release October 27th this year. No word on a Western release, but you can bet there's definitely one coming.
Yeah.
Mega Drive 2 Mini was Thunder Force 4, so I know you're buying 4 copies. How about you, Zoydo?
Yeah, maybe if it makes its way to Europe, I will buy a copy, but I haven't really heard about it yet. I need to check this one out, with what other games it comes, and I got the Mega Drive 1, so why not getting the Mega Drive 2? And I haven't played the Mega Drive version of Sylphid as far as I know, so that would be interesting too.
Yeah.
Weren't they also doing Sega CD games in this, or am I misremembered?
Yeah, there are several Sega CD titles that are part of the bundle. So with Game Arts on board, as far as I know, it's not just Sylphid, but they're also including Popful Mail, which is a Game Arts title, and I want to say there's one other, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't think the full list of 50 games has been announced yet. They've only announced some of them. So of course there's a possibility that there could be other shooting games in there. But it's kind of neat that we're getting Sylphid, because I think that's a little bit of a forgotten game on the Sega CD library.
Robo Alesta would be cool too.
Robo Alesta would be cool, as would Bari Arm, or Android Assault as we know it here in the North American territory.
What's the... Yeah, that's got like a weird subtitle, doesn't it? Android Assault... It's not Revenge of Joe's Brother, because it came out... What's this?
Right.
It's got some weird subtitle. It's alright, I'm sure we'll get it later.
Yeah, The Revenge of Bari Arm.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was just known as Bari Arm in Japan, so they kind of tied that in to the Western title.
And I'm surprised nobody mentioned the most expensive Sega CD game here.
Oh, Snatcher?
No, I don't think Snatcher. I'm talking about...
Oh,
Bunny Girls.
KO Flying Squadron.
KO Flying, yep.
Yeah, that would be amazing to get that on this unit, because if that happened, then that would make that game more of a shoe-in for the Shmup Club at some point, because right now, other than emulation, there's really no good way to play that game, because every release of KO Flying Squadron is expensive through all territories, including
the European demo disc that they infamously, or I should say famously screwed up on. Do you hear that story?
Yeah, where there's a way to unlock the full game on the European demo disc.
Right, they put the full game on there instead of, it's supposed to be one level, but they put the full game on.
Right. Yeah, and one of the cool things about the Mega Drive Mini 2 that I saw from the presentation is, like the original Mega Drive Mini, where they're going to allow you to do a sort of mini Tower of Power thing. They're going to be including a thing where you can buy an add-on 32X, a game cartridge that you can stick in the system. I don't remember what game it is. But then also the Sega CD2 add-on that you can sort of just snap onto the side of the Mega Drive 2 Mini, and even has a flip-top lid you can open and put in a still feed game disc, which of course is just a little plastic disc that will look like the still feed CD, but it's kind of a fun little tchotchke that you can have to collect. I don't know if I would go to spending all of that money to get all of that, but it's still kind of fun.
Swiss Army Mega Drive.
Yes.
Okay, Shmuplations has released an interview with Takatsuna Senba, who developed Gun Frontier and was the producer and art director of Metal Black, both classic Taito STG. I gotta read this one.
Yeah, me too. I just saw this earlier. Somehow I missed this on Elixir's at Shmup's Twitter thread from a few days ago, so I'm definitely going to have to go and read that interview, because Gun Frontier famously being the game that I think is often credited as the primary inspiration for Yagawa to make Battle Gorega.
Yeah.
I thought that was Pain and Suffering.
Well, Pain and Suffering might have been the second tier inspiration.
Just add a dash of that.
Right. There's another new free Dojin shooter called Tukiono, which I guess translates as Moonlit Field from what I saw. Is out now from Nizakashi. It's on itch.io, and it can be played in the browser, or you can download it to a PC. And it's a horizontal Danmaku style with what appears to be some kind of slowdown mechanic that you can activate as maybe one of the game's main gimmicks, and combines a sort of slowdown and bullet canceling effect. It's got a very chunky pixel art style, similar to Barrage Fantasia, I think, that was out last year or the year before. Sort of very large, chunky pixels.
You mean chibi or chunky?
I mean chunky. Yeah, the game looks like it's meant for an 8-bit platform, kind of like the Pico 8 style.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Become
chunky.
Popular. Yeah, chunky, whatever.
No, it's alright. I think chunky is just the modernized term.
Right. But it looks neat. And so I'll definitely have to check that one out. And I think I linked that on in the Discord. Nope, maybe I didn't. I will definitely have to link that then.
Speaking of chunky on there, I was thinking if we were to ever make an official Shoot the Corecast STG, maybe we could just use, Nodcats out there, we have Neko Navy. It wouldn't be a far stretch to use Chonks, right?
Oh.
We could just have Chonks the STG.
Yeah, there you go.
DG Psycho M1 could do the soundtrack for it.
Yes, he could. Be all drum and bass.
There we go. And hot tubs. You got to have a hot tub power up.
Yes.
All right. G-Darius Eurokill is out now on PS4 and PS5 and Switch in Japan with a Western release through NIS America planned, including a physical. It's a combination visual novel and shooting game, which would be interesting. Whenever visual, I know that visual novels are more than this, but ever I think of visual novels for some reason, I think of Ace Attorney series, and then recently Doki Doki Literature Club.
Right. From what I understand of people who have played the game already, this is sort of like Danganronpa with shmup stages. And so you can play through the main game and then go back and forth between your visual novel pieces and your shmup pieces. And then once you've kind of played through the whole thing, then you unlock the shmup stages that you can play just by themselves, and then do score attack and that sort of thing, more of an arcade mode.
Yeah, that could sort of work. I was thinking you take that and translate that over to, like, you know, they had Persona Tactics. How about Persona STG?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, could be interesting.
Made for a good fighting game.
Yeah, it's true. What is that? Persona Strikers?
I think it's Persona. Yeah, Persona Strike. There's like 2 different versions of it, but yeah, I think you're right.
Cool. Yeah, I've already got it pre-ordered, so we'll see.
Alright, Bullet Hell Monday, long exclusive to mobile phones, is coming to PC and the Steam page is up now. This is pretty cool. I haven't heard about this yet, but I played quite some Bullet Hell Monday on my mobile phone, so it's interesting to see how this works on Steam for PC.
Yeah, especially because the touchscreen controls are such an integral part of the game. So yeah. I'm wondering if they'll include mouse control as an option, so that you get a little bit more of that granular movement like you do with a touchscreen.
That would be possible. It worked pretty well for Demonizer. I played Demonizer with mouse controls too, and I was surprised how good it works. So maybe they have mouse controls on it.
Yeah. Well, and of course Demonizer has the Android version, which I played, and that works pretty well with touch controls as well. So yeah. It would be neat to see that. I mean, years ago, when I used to play Tyrion all the time, I always played it with the mouse, because it allows you to do that. And so then you get the ability to have that more granular movement and kind of jump back and forth on the screen a lot so that you can get more enemies or pick up more items, that kind of a thing. So it's neat to see that at least it's an option or could be an option for more games to give you that ability. I know there are purists out there who would only want to play with keyboard or stick or gamepad or whatever, and only with digital control. But I think offering analog control is always a good idea whenever possible, because it just makes the genre more accessible for folks. And I think that's a good thing.
I wonder how they will do the stage layout, because on the mobile version you have those nice little portions stage by stage, and I wonder if they change it for a PC release so you have more stages in a row, or if they keep the nice little portions.
Yeah, I'm guessing they'll keep the format. Maybe they'll offer a sort of arcade mode, if you will, that will combine a bunch of stages together.
Yeah, for example.
But much like Beat Hazard, I would imagine they would stick with a single stage format.
Speaking of Demonizer, I'm hoping that he gets that physical release sometime soon. I know that he was in talks, so hopefully it comes out of AsiaSoft or something else, or heck, I'll even take a X Arcadia report.
Yeah, well, not sure we'll ever see that here in the West if it goes to Exa Arcadia, but
True. What's a $2,000 plane ticket in order to play a shmup, right?
Yes. So the classic cave shoot 'em up Gwange, otherwise known in the shmup meme community as Gawang, is now playable on the Mr. FPGA. The only home port that we've seen of this game so far is a digital version on the Xbox 360 Marketplace. And I believe it was included with the big cave shooting box that was released in Japan that had all the cave shooters released on 360 in that one collection. But I seem to remember someone telling me that it wasn't actually on disc. It was a download code on a card that came in the box. So it was still only digital. So it's cool that there's at least another way to play this, because I don't know that Gwange ever actually got a Western Xbox Live or Xbox Marketplace release. So I think it might still be locked to the Japanese Xbox store.
Yeah, I would prefer to call those download codes only IOUs.
Yeah.
Really disappointing, especially when they say, like, oh, here's a gold edition, and then it's just the actual regular game, and then here's a card where you can download the rest.
Right. But yeah, it's good to see this game getting a little bit wider availability, I guess. Obviously, through the Mr. FPGA, it's not legit, it's not a way that you can purchase the game, but it's a way you can experience the game. And it is a good game. I played this when I was at Galloping Ghost, and it's pretty neat. So it's good to see that it is going to be, that it is more widely available again. And maybe we'll get lucky and Livewire will pick this one up alongside some of the other games that they've done and try to get this one released again.
Here's hoping. And speaking of the Xbox 360 Marketplace, formerly delisted shooter Omega 5 is back on the Xbox Marketplace. It's a modern take on the Forgotten Realms formula, and it's a Hudson self-published title, which means Konami owns it, so expect a pachinko minigame, maybe? Though it was developed by Natsume, so no word on how long it will remain on the market again. It was originally released January 2008 and delisted a few years ago. Yeah, definitely pick it up. I know that Nintendo and Sony have a habit of closing stuff a lot faster than Microsoft, but these digital storefronts are going to close, and the only other possibility is to go the way of the JTAG. So,
right,
definitely give it a shot where you can.
Yeah, this game looks good, and I didn't find out about it until it had been delisted, because I came very late to the Xbox 360. So I was disappointed to see that this really cool-looking Forgotten Worlds style game, where you've got kind of a free movement of your weaponry while you auto-scroll and move around the stage, was no longer available. So I'm glad to see that it is once again up for purchase, and I will definitely be going and throwing a few bucks at the Microsoft store to buy this.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like shmup related stuff that just sort of sitting out there on the digital storefront for the Xbox 360. When that goes down, we're going to lose a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, Team Overloaded has been posting video teasers and gameplay snippets of Assault Shell 2, showing off new characters and mechanics. Unfortunately, I missed the playthrough for Assault Shell, or the original game. I still gotta get this and give it a shot.
Yeah, it's a good game, and so far, what I've seen from the stuff that has been posted on Twitter, Assault Shell 2 looks like it's going to be even more involved and interesting. And so there are new mechanics and new characters that are being shown off, and it's looking good.
Yeah, Assault Shell is one of those games where I was initially thinking this might be a little bit simplistic, but I was rather surprised by how well the game played, and the soundtrack was nice. It was definitely a well done Dojin, and it was fun to talk to the developer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched a few videos after the podcast, after listening to the podcast episode, and it looked really fun. I definitely need to pick this up soon.
Yeah, it's a cool game. I would definitely recommend picking it up on itch.io, because I want to say, if I remember correctly, you get a free Steam key doing that.
Okay.
And so that way you'll have it on Steam in your Steam library and have the DRM free version through itch.
Cool.
There's a new online game that you can play that called Shmup Heerdle. So, of course, most of us have probably been inundated on Twitter and Facebook and other places with people obsessing over the game Wordle. And I guess there are multiple versions of this Heerdle, where it's sound-based, where you hear a little bit of a snippet of something and then try to guess what it is. And so this takes that idea and then just applies it to video game music, specifically from shoot 'em ups. And so actually this is also from some guy who developed Assault Shell and is developing Assault Shell 2. And so you can search out Shmup Heerdle and then go and hear snippets. And I want to say you get 5 or 6 snippets, and they're all strung together. And so you can sort of see how knowledgeable you are about STG soundtracks, and try to guess the game as quickly as possible. There have been a handful that I've guessed within one or two segments, and then there have been a few that stumped me because I'm not as familiar with some of the other games. But it's kind of fun to go in there every day and just take a couple of minutes and play that.
Our next bit of news is Japanese developer and publisher Terrorine Games has released Terraflame on Steam, which appears to be very inspired by the Thunder Force series of games. So, I imagine if it's inspired by Thunder Force, you're going to be streaming it soon.
Well, I don't know about streaming it soon, but it definitely looks good. And, anything that is Thunder Force inspired is something that I'm going to want to have on my radar.
Terrarian games are always great. I've played almost all of the recent releases, and I love them. They're great. So I'm really looking forward to Terraflame. I haven't played it yet, but I need to pick it up soon.
Oh, nice.
Okay, due out June 29th is the Nichibutsu Shooting Soundbox, a 9-CD compilation with music from the entire Nichibutsu Shmup library, covering everything from early games like Moon Cresta, Tube Panic and Cycross to later stuff like Terra Cresta 2 and Terra Cresta 3D.
Yeah, this is very tempting. I've kind of got on this kick where I've been buying video game soundtracks on vinyl for years. And more recently, I've taken to buying some game soundtracks on CD, because there are a lot of them that you can buy through Amazon Japan. And so, I got things like the Thunder Force and Thunder Force 2 CD set, the Thunder Force 3 and AC set, and then the Thunder Force 4 set. I bought the Fantasy Zone collection, and then most notably, I also bought the big Konami arcade shooting box set, which I think has something like 11 or 12 discs of just all of Konami's shoot-'em-up games. And so something like this is very tempting. I'll have to check Amazon Japan and see what it's priced at. But yeah, I love seeing stuff like this. These kinds of games getting recognition again. And of course, with the more recent release of Soul Cresta, some of these games are coming back into focus again. And that comes in conjunction with a lot of them getting re-released on arcade archives. But it's neat to see that this stuff isn't forgotten, and that there's still a way to procure some of these soundtracks legally and legitimately.
I will tell you this now. The day that you post that you bought the 1942 soundtrack is the day I schedule an intervention for you.
Well, I'll tell you what. If Capcom offers a 19XX series box set where you can get all the soundtracks, the fact that 1942 might be included in that should not qualify me for that. Because the other soundtracks are good. But I would agree, if I just buy the 1942 soundtrack, quote in quotes, then yes, I would welcome an intervention.
I would assume, though, that the 1942 soundtrack would come with pre-order bonus of earplugs.
Yes, Capcom branded earplugs.
Plasmo tweeted recently about the Battle Garega hitboxes, noting that they are off-center by 1 pixel, always on the right side, so the right side of each plane or craft is less vulnerable than the left side. I'd tell you, Snagglepuss had it right. Exit stage left.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, Plasmo was on our Battle Garega episode that we did, and is very knowledgeable about the game. So this was a neat little revelation to see, and I thought it was interesting that it's like this. And so he also mentioned that there's one particular safe spot on what was it, a stage 3 boss or something like that. I'd have to go back to the tweet thread and look, but there's one particular boss where there's a safe spot that only works on the right side, or on the left side of the screen, because the right side of the ship is less vulnerable. So that is an interesting explanation. So I guess if you're playing and practicing Garega, know that any exploits that you use in terms of safe spots or those kinds of things will favor your right side of your plane or craft, which is kind of neat.
There's apparently a bug fix in the new EXA port of Dodonpachi Saidaioju with the hitbox, so it stays properly centered with lateral movement instead of moving the opposite direction of the ship's movement.
Yeah, and this was something that I saw on Elixir's Twitter feed, and there was a picture that sort of showed the differences between a stock SDOJ hitbox and the EXA SDOJ hitbox, and it doesn't look like it's that vastly different, but it's enough for the more hardcore players to probably be able to notice, and it likely will change some routing for people who are specifically practicing and playing the EXA version. I didn't see much explanation beyond that, but it is kind of interesting that a long-standing quirk, I guess you could say, of the original SDOJ is something that they felt was worth correcting, if you will, in the new port. So I'd be curious to know if the EXA version of SDOJ ever comes out of EXA exclusivity and then eventually gets ported back to consoles again later, if that would carry forward, or if there would be an option for original hitbox versus updated hitbox, because SDOJ in particular has a very visible, obvious hitbox, as opposed to, of course, the early games in the series like Donpachi and Dodonpachi. They didn't really start having more obvious hitboxes, I think, until Daifukatsu or DDP Resurrection. Something else that I saw is apparently there's someone who has created an English translation hack for the 360 version of Odomedius G, or Odomedius Gorgeous, which is kind of interesting. So for those of you, as Addicted mentioned before, those of you with a JTAG 360 or an RGH 360, or I guess if you're using Xenia, the 360 emulator on PC, you can try out the English translation hack.
Those poor people.
Yeah, I've got Odomedius G, so I don't know how much of the game would be affected by translation, but it's just neat to see that people are taking the time to do these things.
I mean, I appreciate that someone is actually doing it, but there's so much out there to... I don't know. Maybe there's something about Odomedius G that I'm missing, but I gotta say I wasn't exactly too impressed by the Odomedius we got here in the West. It just felt... the hitboxes were as big as a girl's, well, we won't call it there, and the fact that it had a touch sensor on the official arcade stick just sort of put a creepy feeling to me on stuff that sorry, it's maybe just not for me.
Yeah, I get it.
And I can stomach Deep Space Waifu, which should tell you a lot.
Now, the question, though, is can you stomach Deep Space Waifu after a full plate of Tex-Mexium?
Oh, jeez, no way, no way. The power of Tex-Mexium, no way.
Okay, as with the physical release of Mushi Misama on Switch, Limited Run Games has announced physicals for the Livewire Switch releases of Dodonpachi Resurrection and Escaluda 2 as well. Also announced are Rendering Ranger R2, a very rare SNES run-and-gun shmup hybrid, and the Konami Arcade Classic Anniversary Collection, Gradius, Gradius 2, Life Force Salamander, Typhoon, Thundercross, Twinbee, and Scramble.
Yeah, see, and the funny thing is, I thought that Limited Run had already done the Konami Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection as a physical. I thought they had done that already, but apparently they hadn't. So I thought somehow I missed out on that, but I'm glad to see that I was mistaken, and I'll actually be able to get it. I've already purchased most of those games through the Arcade Archives ports on the Switch, but it's nice that they're still getting the physical, so then we'll be able to kind of keep those long-term.
Aren't the Konami Classic, the arcade stuff, Arcade Archives, just bundled together anyways?
No, they're all separate purchases.
No, I mean, they're the same things. They just took the Arcade Archives ports and then bundled them under Konami.
Oh, yes.
Grouping, and then, yeah.
Yes, you can buy the bundle digitally and save a couple of bucks. But yeah, most of these I've already purchased individually. But like I say, it'll be good to have them physically so that if the Arcade Archives lineup ever disappears from digital marketplaces, right, we'll still have this.
You know, I'm wondering what Limited Run Games would throw in as a... what are you throwing for as a physical for this? If you're going to go out on your mega deals, I know that recently announced Shredder's Revenge has a Pizza Hut pizza coupon. I mean, what do you do this year? Like your health club membership? A replica pachinko machine? What do you put in here?
Maybe a pachinko token?
Oh, there we go. You get your comedy pachinko token that has... you get the lower British edition, or you could get the Vic Viper edition.
There you go.
Oh no, I'm giving my ideas. I better stop.
I'm a little disappointed that the Arcade Anniversary Collection doesn't have Thundercross 2, which would be nice. I'm okay that it doesn't include Gradius 3, but Thundercross 2 would be nice.
After playing Gradius 3, I can confirm.
Yeah, or it also doesn't have Trigon or Lightning Fighters. That would be cool to have in there, but again, those are still available digitally, and then maybe eventually they'll do an Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection 2, and that'll have, Gradius 3, maybe Gradius 4 eventually if they decide to bring that forward. Maybe it'll have Lightning Fighters, maybe it'll have Ajax, that kind of a thing. So we'll just have to wait and see, but at least we're getting this.
Yeah, it's definitely a start in the right direction, and this is Konami and the Konami of late has proven to be very much like the Disney of late. As long as they can make some money off of it, they're all for it.
Yes.
And we talked about this earlier within our Turning the Tables episode. I want to put this out here. The Day We Fought Space is finally available for purchase on iOS and Apple devices. Congratulations to them.
Yeah, this happened a couple of weeks ago now, I think. And so, when we did our first Shoot the Corecast Gaiden episode, it was the developer interview, all about The Day We Fought Space. And so, that's been long enough ago that it feels like, I want to say that was 2019 when we did that interview.
That was pre-COVID, yeah. So, you get that Robin Williams bumping out going, what year is it?
Right.
From Jumanji.
Yeah.
That's how it feels. But definitely, I made it told to them.
Yeah. It's cool to see that it's finally out. And so if you, I would say especially if you have an iPad, go check this game out because it's a lot of fun and it's a neat sort of, I guess you would call it a roguelite type of game in that each run is new and different. The enemy waves will be different. There is some story to the game and so forth, but it's just kind of a cool game with a ton of different weapon variety and multi-touch screen capabilities, and so it's
I think it's the only STG out there with surf rock as a soundtrack. I can't think of any others.
Probably, yeah. So definitely worth checking out.
Indeed, and since we've been giving out the news here, one game came to mind when I should have mentioned for Turning the Tables. But there's one game that is one of the core mechanics, and that's Metal Gear Solid 5.
Right.
Well, it is. You have to capture the enemies in order to build up your base, and each enemy has a rank.
Oh, yes.
And so and you tranquilize them, and then you shoot them up into the air, so they're captured. People always had fun for a while just seeing what they could lift off with how many different balloons. Like you see goats flying off into the sky and all sorts of fun stuff.
That's true.
But that is quintessential turning the tables on your enemy.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's all the shmup news we've got. So let's go ahead and shout out our participants for the month. We, of course, had myself, MetalFRO, and Addicted. We also had Mini Console Man, Corkman, Faux Macho, Zoydo, naturally, and Dougley 007.
He's been here for what, like everything on there? Or do we just keep, I mean, even if he doesn't say anything, do we just keep his name on the list?
Well, Dougley doesn't participate in as all the shmup playthroughs. I know he does usually participate in every single regular community playthrough, but he only occasionally jumps in on the shmup side.
I have to say, though, we should get him like a trophy or something for like the most continuous months.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know that anyone has done more playthrough participation on RF Generation than Dougley 007.
All right, so let's talk about the game that we all played in May of 2022, and that was G-Darius. It was developed and published by Taito and arcades in 1997, running off the Taito FX1B hardware, which is loosely based on the Sony PlayStation 1. This type of hardware was also used in other arcade games such as Namco's System 11 and System 12, which ran Tekken, Tekken 3, and the infamous Dancing Eyes. Other FX1B games include Fighters Impact and sequel Fighters Impact A and Raystorm. It's also possible to run G-Darius on Taito's GNet hardware, though unofficially. A revision of the game, G-Darius version 2, was released in Japan, which made the game more difficult and adds a per-zone high score table to the game's attack mode, as well as other changes. And later on, a beginner mode was introduced that can be chosen in a new selection screen that appears before the game starts. Only the first 3 stages can be played in this mode, so the player's power-up level only goes down by 1 level upon death. An auto-fire function was added, mapped to button 3. which is good because with Jam and Standard you only get 3 buttons.
Yes.
When using a capture ball, the player is no longer invulnerable. Each boss now has a timer, 180 seconds for normal bosses, and 540 seconds for the final boss. Upon clearing the stage, there is a bonus of 1,000 points for each second remaining. After continuing, the player is given one of each missile, bomb arm, and capture ball power-ups. In the original, only the first 3 were provided in the form of a combined power-up. Version 2 also adds additional captains, so that there's one in each zone, where a couple of zone locations didn't have one previously. It should also be noted that the only previously, from the M2 port, the only way to play this was on the arcade or on the PlayStation 1 port. The PlayStation 1 port plays very well and is extremely faithful. The only thing I wish that they kept in is I wish they used the in-engine intro cutscenes instead of made those full motion video, but maybe it was done because there just wasn't space on the disc. The Redbook audio, I'm not quite certain the reason. Do you know Guru or Zoydo?
I'm not sure why they did it that way.
Though it's the 4th arcade entry and 6th overall, it's a prequel in the original G-Darius arcade release. And I swear that the amount of backstory they used on this for the story, the game story itself, is longer than the game.
Right.
The arcade release apparently has a level select built in using the Taito code, which is hold the service coin button up upon booting and wait until a service switch error message pops up on the screen. Press the first player start 3 times, service coin, then 1 player start again. Upon this, game boots as normal. However, upon inserting credit, the player is redirected to a stage selection menu. Pressing player 1 left right scrolls through levels, and player 1 button 1 chooses a level. Not as straightforward or as memorable as the Konami code, but it definitely works.
No, and I pulled that verbatim from the Cutting Room Floor website, so I haven't tested this myself, but it's interesting that it's in the game, and I don't know if that was a testing thing or if they left it in there on purpose, but it's neat.
Yeah, I didn't know about this either. That's interesting.
G-Darius is also the first game in the franchise to move away from the sprite-based graphics and into 3D polygons. As mentioned earlier, a PlayStation version of the game was released in 1998 based upon the version 2 of this game. This release contains a boss practice mode to help players learn and master boss fights. Taito published this in Japan, and THQ for the Western release. The PlayStation 1 version was used as a basis for the PC port released in 2000 and 2001 by multiple publishers. The original arcade release is included in the PS2 version of the Taito Legends compilation, but the PS2 port runs faster, if I remember right. It removes the slowdown, so it's a harder game.
Yeah, I want to say Icarus FW did a YouTube video on this a few years ago, or maybe it was just last year when this came out, when the M2 ports came out, did a comparison of essentially every version of G-Darius: arcade, PS1, PS2, PC version, and the M2 ports to sort of compare to see how close or far they are. And yeah, it's funny that in some ways the PS1 port is actually more accurate, I guess you could say, than the Taito Legends 2 version on PS2, which is essentially just the ROM running in MAME on PS2, in that sort of encapsulation.
As a rapper, yeah. I swear that someday we'll find out that someone did a Famicom port of this. There's a bootleg somewhere. Or there's an MSX port for some reason. It's just been reimagined. It's not quite like they did with Gradius and Salamander. So the PS1 version received generally favorable reviews, and Game Machine magazine in Japan noticed that G-Darius is the fourth most successful arcade game of the month in August 15th, 1997 issue. Taito contracted M2 to bring the Darius arcade releases forward in a pair of compilations, the Darius Cosmic Collection and the Darius Cosmic Revelation, the later of which contains G-Darius HD. It has also received a standalone digital and physical release on the Switch and PS4, the digital releases across other modern platforms such as Steam. I like the standalone release because it's cheap and it's really easy for someone to get into this now without having to deal with PS1, and M2 did a brilliant job. The only thing that bugs me about the new release is it seems to have like those, everyone remember those Dreamcast stuff when it says like hot new or bestseller? I don't know why there's this giant sticker on the front of it. It just seems to detract from the game on there, but I guess if that's what's needed to get people to look at STGs these days, so be it.
Yeah, well, at least there's no frothing demand from IGN.
Frothing demand, yeah, only from Mullet Man or G-Darius.
I've got a question. The PlayStation version of the game was released in 1998 based on the version 2 release of the game. I read this somewhere else, but I don't understand why the PS1 version is based on version 2 of the arcade game.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. And realistically, it doesn't, when you play it, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's based on version 2 either.
No.
So, I'm not sure what source that was.
I think I came across that too, and I already wondered about this, because the only thing I can see is taken from version 2 is the auto-fire button or the rapid-fire option. And the rest of the game, the beginner mode, only applies to the version 1, so there's not much or nothing at all from version 2 in the PlayStation version.
Yeah.
As much as I can see.
So that may be a wiki casualty of bad information there.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a 1.5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe it was originally they started out on version 1.0 and then they added stuff on later as it came out in development, and the way they went, I don't know. A lot happens.
Weird.
All right, would you like to toss a coin to our Witcher here and regale us with a story?
Me?
I'm sorry, anyone who wants to go through this interesting lore piece here.
I'm going to read the story. The story revolves around civilization of the planet Amnelia and its conflict with the invading Thema. The Thema were alerted of the existing of the Amnelians after they used a highly destructive AN weapon, which means all nothing, to eliminate the satellite Plaza during a previous conflict between the planet and the Amnelians, who had migrated to the satellite years earlier, as they fought over control of the Amnelian moon Massa. The 25th king of Amnelia was a genius scientist and reverse-engineered Thema technology and combined it with tech used in the AN weapon to create spaceships as a last-ditch effort to fight off the Thema invasion. 2 young pilots were chosen to helm these vessels, Samelak Ryder and Lucia Fiend. The Silverhawk RRCF Rota, better known as the Silverhawk Genesis, would be the last hope of the Amnelians as they set out to the Thema base of Kazum, a satellite of planet Darius. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and this story, I sort of... The story synopsis that I've got here in the notes, I put together based on a very long story that I found version on the G-Darius fandom wiki page.
I read this too this morning, and we have the short version here.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on, but one of the main things I guess I want to draw your attention to is the AN weapon piece. That sort of ties into when you first start the game and it loads up, and the sort of intro sequence to the first stage, you see the screen that looks like a heads-up display of your Silverhawk, and in the top right corner it says AN Drive. And so that is the tie-in there, where it's the utilizing that all-nothing weapon technology to help power the Silverhawk Genesis.
Right, yeah.
I have to say, for a late 90s game, it certainly feels like this could have come out of a late 70s, early 80s anime. It really feels like we can insert the word Voltron in there somewhere or something like that, and it would just fine. I guess just it feels very similar when we were talking about Life Force and Gradius, and we found that Konami tried to create its own. What's the Konami-verse? I don't know what's the correct. How do you describe it? What they had Salamander as just like a first episode in their anime. You know, the people came from planet Gradius in order to help defeat the evil Bacterian army had targeted, so they launched their fighter, Lord British, and man, even I feel like I'm, drawing connections between yarn points on a big map on the wall here. It's a convoluted story, but I love that they went with it.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
As deep and complex as the story is, it's interesting enough, I think, that like the Salamander OVA concept that we got from Konami, this could be good potential fodder for a multi-episode anime OVA kind of thing, where they could take an episode or two to flesh out the backstory about planet Amnelia and the development of the kings and the civilization, and then eventually the development of the technology that powered the civilization, and then kind of fast forward to the 25th king, and now we're in this situation where we've got this AN weapon, we've got this conflict between the satellite Blazar and the planet itself, and then that sort of sparks the events of the Thema coming to try and take out the Amnelians, and as cheesy as a lot of shmup stories are when you read the 1 or 2 paragraph synopses in the game manuals and things, this is actually deep enough that I think they could do something cool with it. So it's a little bit of a missed opportunity that Taito didn't take the chance to contract with maybe a B or C tier studio to make a tie-in for it, because I think actually that could be cool.
Yeah, it would have been nice, yeah.
And if they ever made a manga out of it, I would love to see the guys who did the covers for iMagic do it.
Yes, go full demon attack.
Indeed. Well, now that we're talking about going on the attack here, you want to take us into the gameplay?
Yeah, so as we kind of alluded to in the setup, this actually started as a 2-button game with 1 button for firing and then 1 for using your capture ball. And as you mentioned before, version 2 added the 3rd button for auto-fire, which is great for those of us who are trending toward carpal tunnel, like myself.
Trending? Speak for yourself.
Yeah. So the capture ball is the new mechanic to the series with this game, and it sort of stems from a limited capture mechanic in its predecessor, Darius Gaiden, where there was a sort of an orb on the top of each of the captains or mid-boss characters in each stage of Darius Gaiden, and if you could fire upon that orb enough without completely destroying that enemy itself, then you could sort of convert that enemy to fly alongside you for a little while and provide additional fire. They take that one step further here by actually giving you a resource of the capture ball that you can then throw out and capture enemies. And so you can fire the ball out, capture an enemy, and then it will fight alongside you, and that looks different depending on what enemy you capture. And then there are multiple things you can do with that captured enemy. You can let it fight alongside you until it's destroyed. That's your first choice. Your second choice is if you hit the capture button again, you can detonate that enemy like a bomb, and it creates a large area of effect.
You know, what you're describing here seems a lot like STG Pokemon.
Well, you got to catch them all.
Oh, that's that what you... No wonder why they couldn't get the high score. No wonder why you kept beating me.
And then option 3 is if once you've captured an enemy, if you hold down the fire button, you'll actually absorb the enemy and charge up what is called the Alpha Beam. And that is a large laser that you can then fire out once you've charged with a captured enemy. And so you hold the fire button to charge the laser, then you release and then rapid fire your weapon, either with button 3 in version 2 in the console ports, or just by rapidly tapping your fire button to then release and utilize the Alpha Beam to take out enemies and do major damage on bosses. And the Alpha Beam is a key element of this game, as we'll learn kind of going along through talking the gameplay.
You can't beat the game without it, right?
Well, you probably can, but it's much easier with the game. And of course, as we'll learn later from a scoring perspective, you also want to make sure that you use the Alpha Beam from time to time.
Right, it's almost like a focus shot that actually has to be strategically used, right? And that was the similarity, and we're dealing with Danmaku-style games were certainly around at this time. And so it's an interesting way of adding strategy to your focus shot and dealing with scoring and strategy. And I wonder if this is partially inspired by Dragon Ball Z with the amount of over-the-top focus fire that goes on between all this stuff.
So are you saying that the Alpha Beam is basically just Kamehameha?
Well, someone's going to throw in a voice clip there, right? Kamehameha.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to beat the game without the Alpha Beam, because if you don't use the Alpha Beam, the bosses have a lot of hit points, and you have to loop through all the phases, which are getting harder and harder, and it takes quite some time to kill the bosses just by your regular fire.
Yeah, they are incredibly spongy. But So the big thing with the Alpha Beam and the bosses is that bosses also have a similar laser weapon. Your Alpha Beam is kind of a blue color. Their Alpha Beam or similar laser is a sort of pink color. And
I guess it's actually called Beta Beam.
Oh, Beta Beam, yes.
Bosses. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that.
Sure, yeah.
And essentially what you want to do is when a boss fires out their Beta Beam, you want to then counter that with your Alpha Beam. And this sets up what you can do with the game with beam duels. And by mashing on the fire button a bunch and hitting it as quickly as you can, or of course using rapid fire in the console ports and version 2, you can essentially overpower the boss's Beta Beam. And by countering with their Beta Beam, you grow the Alpha Beam, and you can double it in size, and then once you overpower the boss's Beta Beam, then you do major damage against that boss for however long the beam lasts. And of course that is based upon how quickly you mash, or just standard length if you're using auto fire. The really neat hook comes when there are bosses that will shoot out more than one Alpha Beam. So, for example, one of the shining examples of this is Fire Fossil in the top route through the game. has a section where it will fire out 4 successive beta beams. And so if you can counter all 4 of them successfully, you can go from a standard beam to double, to triple, to fourfold, which fills a large portion of the screen and does massive damage, and it really looks cool and is a fun mechanic, but is also the best way to take out the bosses, because then you're ensuring that, as Zoydo said, you don't have to actually loop through the attack patterns and phases of the boss a second or third time, because they do get more difficult.
Yeah. Some of the bosses also vary their beta beam attacks after the or going through the loops. For example, the boss of the third stage, I have to look up its name. Dual Horn, right.
Yes.
In the first loop, he shoots 1 beta beam at you, and if you loop through if you go through the second loop of his attack patterns, he shoots 2 beta beams at you in the second loop. So you can use that to optimize your score later on, because you get 1 score for a higher value of your beam counter. And that's the case with some bosses. So yeah, maybe you want to loop through the boss phases if you're a more skilled player to get a higher score in the end.
Yes. And as we kind of mentioned before, most stages in the game have a larger kind of mid-boss enemy known as a captain, which of course, as we mentioned before, stems from Darius Gaiden. And each one of these captains has gold plating on it, usually on its face. And that makes the enemy uncapturable, at least at first. Once you do enough damage, you can destroy the gold plating and then capture the captain. And you want to do this for multiple reasons. First and foremost, the captains are large, and a lot of times, because they kind of follow and track your movements, you can sort of sit inside the captain or alongside it so that it will tank for you and take enemy fire. Number 2, enemies that are destroyed by the captain are worth more points. And then number 3, I believe you get an additional bonus if you carry your captain all the way to the boss fight and can use that to create the alpha beam with the captain. So there's a lot going on.
You forgot the 4th one.
What's that?
You forgot the 4th one. Once you capture a captain, you always have to say, "I'm the captain now."
Oh, well, unfortunately, once you capture the captain, you also you don't have the option to then subsequently capture Tennille.
Oh.
There's a small segment of the audience that's going to get that joke. But yeah, captains are a vital mechanic in the game. Also, each captain has its own special attack, which you can activate with a fighting game style input. So, for example, the very first captain in the alpha stage, you do just a standard Hadouken style quarter circle roll in order to get it to fire out a cool sort of laser thing. It does this fun thing where it spins around and then does the roll. Or the large, I'm trying to think of what kind of fish it is in Delta. A little bit like not a clownfish, but anyway, it's a taller fish, and that one shoots out these waves. But if you do a Shoryuken or a Dragon Punch type of movement with that, then it does 2 sets of waves on the top and bottom, and then a front-facing laser that it'll shoot out as its special move. I didn't figure out all the special moves for the captains that I captured, but it's a cool extra kind of mechanic that the game has, which is fun to play with.
And the M2 gadgets give you information about how to trigger the special attacks.
Yeah, that's a nice feature of the modern ports.
Yeah.
Did either of you have a favorite captain or a favorite special attack that they would perform?
I don't know about special attacks, but my favorite captain might be maybe Queen's Child.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty cool, and it takes a lot of damage. I don't know if it takes more damage than the others, but it feels like a tank, and it works pretty well. And I like its firepower.
Yeah, it does take a lot of firepower.
Oh, and the boss, the mid boss of Lambda Zone is pretty cool too. I don't know the name. I have to look it up. Unguardian.
Oh yes, Unguardian.
Yeah, that's cool. Pretty cool too.
Yeah, if I had to say a captain, I would say Big Mouth Billy Bass. I mean, it talks too much, but man, when you use that quarter circle move, it works out pretty well. No, the ones that I could use were basically the one in stage 1, because I actually had time to input those commands. I didn't have time to input the Konami code as I was trying to fight off this armada.
Come on.
I'm not very skilled at it, in other words.
Come on, Addicted. Everyone's got time for a Hadouken.
That is true. In fact, we should put that on, maybe get that on a glass for you. A beer glass.
Everyone's got time for a Hadouken.
And for those of you who are probably too young to remember, and thankfully are not, or maybe too young to be traumatized, Big Mouth Billy Bass was a thing in the early 90s. It was a singing fish that you put batteries into in, oh boy, 5 seconds, and it would annoy anybody.
Yeah. There's an entire YouTube rabbit hole you can go down looking at people who have hacked their Big Mouth Billy Bass with different songs and things, so it will change what song it plays and the movements that it does.
And earlier when we were talking about all the different types of enemies and stuff in Darius game, I would love to just see this giant poster with every enemy on there, and at the top it says, Darius, let's go fishing.
Yes. That's awesome. Zoydo, would you like to illuminate us as to the item pickups?
Yeah, sure. Item pickups. Red orbs power up your weapon by 1 level. Each weapon type can be powered up 6 times until it is upgraded to the next weapon type. You start with missiles, upgrade to lasers, and finally upgrade to the wave cannon. Green orbs power up your bombs. You can power up 3 times before upgrading from single, forward drop bombs to a twin bomb drop, then a 4-way bomb drop. Blue orbs give you a shield that can sustain a few hits. You can refresh the shield with additional blue orb pickups up to 5 times, and on the 6th pickup you'll upgrade from the standard blue shield to the silver shield. 6 more blue orbs and you upgrade to the golden shield. White or grey orbs are score pickups only, and I think they vary in their value. I don't know if you can affect this or if it's completely random, but sometimes they're worth a lot and sometimes they're worth 500 points.
Yeah, and I want to say there is a way to affect the value, but I haven't figured it out fully. I think it has to do with both the position of your ship when you collect them and the arc in the circular movement of the orb. So there's a way to, I won't say guarantee, but there's a way to far increase your chances of success of getting the 2 top score values. But just as easily you can end up with only 100 points, which I think is similar to something like Raiden DX, where there's a split second where you can grab the medals for the highest value, but then if you miss that window, it's back down to 50 or 100 points or something.
Okay. Yeah. maybe most of the time I'm too busy to watch out for that stuff.
Right.
Okay, yellow orbs are like Smart Bomb and will damage or destroy all enemies on screen, depending on how much HP they have. The purple orbs are new to this game, and they are the capture boards you use to trap enemies. These are a limited resource, so you use them wisely. After a death, each new ship starts with three capture boards. You can have a maximum of 6, I guess, and capture board management is an essential part of the game, I'd say. There are a very limited number of 1-up icons hidden in a few stages in the game. The 1-ups are usually in stage 4 of every route. So, there is one enemy that mimics the 1-up icons, but those appear in the later stages, most of them in stage 4 or 5, so you have to watch out for these. And red, green and blue orbs are obtained by destroying enemies of the same color. The other items are hidden in the scenery and must be uncovered by shooting or bombing those areas.
Yeah, and that component has always been an element of the Darius games, because the white or gray and the yellow orbs are something that have been part of the Darius series from the beginning. And so, generally speaking, those were always uncovered by bombing or shooting the floor or the ceiling or something like that.
Right, yeah.
So it's interesting that, now of course in the earlier Darius games, you would have to shoot down a squadron of enemies of some kind in order to get one of the colored orbs to power up your weapons or your shield. But, it was simplified in Darius Gaiden and in this game so that it was only the one enemy in that squadron that you had to take out, usually the last one, that is the color of the orb that they will give out.
Right, yeah.
Like with the previous Darius games, G-Darius has multiple stages and branching paths. You always start out in Zone Alpha, which is at the planet Amnelia in the what is known as the Aus Galaxy. The boss is Eclipse Eye, and then that always branches out to 2 additional stages. And so, stage 2, you can either go to Zone Beta, which has Tripod Sardine as the boss, or Zone Gamma, which the boss is the classic Darius boss, Queen Fossil. And those both take place near the satellite Martha. Stage 3 then branches out into 3 zones, and that can be Zone Delta, with Dual Horn as the boss, Zone Epsilon, which has Dimension Diver, or Zone Zeta, with the boss Absolute Defender. And these are all in outer space. Stage 4 can be Zone Eta, which is Fire Fossil as the boss, Zone Theta, which has Death Wings, Zone Iota, which has a boss known as 8 Feet Umbrella, or Zone Kappa, which has Eternal Triangle. And these are all around the planet Mabahar. And then Stage 5, again, branches out 5 ways. So that can be Zone Lambda, which is the top route, and that boss is Lightning Coronatus. Zone Mu, which has Heavy Arms Shell. Zone Nu, which has the Embryon. Zone Z, which is Accordion Hazard. And then Omicron, which has the boss GT. And those are all near the satellite Kazum in the Rakia Galaxy. Now, one thing I was going to ask, because I know we saw during Shmup Slam 5, there was a live run of G-Darius on what I think they said was the hardest route. And they ended the game, if memory serves, in Zone Nu with the Embryon. Is that canonically the true final boss of G-Darius? or is it the lower route with GT?
That's a good question. I can't really tell which is the harder one. I've never beaten one of them in a complete run, so I can't tell which is the harder route. But as Embryon is special to G-Darius, maybe it's a kind of the TLB or the final story boss.
Right. Well, and my understanding is that 3 of the 5 endings of the game, because the game has 5 endings due to having 5 final stages, that 3 of the 5 endings of the game are technically bad or downer endings. So I don't know which one is considered the good ending or the best ending to get in the game.
That's the Embryon.
Is it the Embryon?
The Embryon stage ends with the ending where both of them go out of their spaceships, and together with the power of Tex-Mexium, they meld and create planet Darius.
Oh, that's right, because that's minus the Tex-Mexium part. That, I think, refers to the story bit in the attract mode where you get that quote from the King Annalea the 25th or whatever, who says, "You will see the creation of new life or new lives." So I'm wondering if that was the sort of foreshadowing to that component.
Yeah, it's really weird. They just basically get out of the spaceship, and then they hold hands, and all of a sudden a planet's formed. It's but so sure, it works.
Right, kind of like that.
But that's
kind of like that thing that happens when you're a little kid, and you think that babies happen when mom and dad hold hands or something like that.
Well, in this case, a planet is born, but
right.
Now, but the other endings are like one where one of them the spaceship dies or explodes, and then one of them jumps out, and then the other Silverhawk goes down to is hurtling towards the planet while they're both just hugging each other in space. It's really bizarre, but I guess the ending where they create a planet seems the best out of all of them. It's
I mean,
interesting.
Like I said, it's a missed opportunity for Taito to not have done an anime based on all of this, because it does feel like it's very in line with that sort of esoteric kind of storytelling.
Yeah, and the Embryon itself is just so weird. It's a manta ray that all of a sudden has a Gundam head in the middle of it, and I was looking at it going, that can't be. No, it's a Gundam head. I mean, they removed maybe just 1 or 2 things to call it satire, but it's a Gundam head in there. It's... In fact, the entire stage is so bizarre. It almost reminds me of Star Fox. What's that zone in Star Fox where you get sucked through a black hole and things just go weird? There's like a clocks or something. I forget what the heck the name of it.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about? The
yes.
Super Nintendo, or yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
It reminds me of that. It's just so weird. Their colors morphing around. It's what's the Sony's mascot for PlayStation 1? Polygon Man. It wouldn't surprise me if Polygon Man just appeared in the background there. Like, it wouldn't even surprise me if Pepsi Man appeared in the background. It's just all over the place, but it's certainly something to try. And the boss is, as expected, hard, and the ending's weird.
Yeah,
still a lot of fun.
Right.
Yeah, the rest of the endings are a bit disappointing. After all your hard work, here's a cutscene showing your main character's dying.
Yeah, but again, it fits that somewhat esoteric Japanese manga and anime style for science fiction stories.
Yeah, and an ending with more Tex-Mexium. I mean, what more could you ask for there?
Now, one of the cool things that is unique to G-Darius is that in addition to the regular branching paths from one stage to the next, each stage actually has a branching path in the stage, generally about the halfway point. And so you can choose the upper or lower path. and there's a little line that you see across the screen. It's sort of a green line, and as the green line gets smaller and shrinks toward the center of the screen, then wherever you're at, top or bottom, or above or below that line, when it disappears, that's when it then confirms which path you've chosen. And
I didn't like this. I did not like this. I got stuck several times on the on the lower path when I didn't mean to. If they would have gotten rid of that and added in like a lock on, where you hit you hit both buttons to lock it in where you're going, that would have made it a lot easier for me than having to deal with, oh shoot, I'm going to the lower level again. You experienced this frustration too, right? When we played some of your playthroughs?
A couple of times. I mean, there were a couple of times I didn't mean to go on a particular path, but really it was more that I was busy dodging and shooting and not paying attention. I think once you get your routing down, then you can more easily choose the path that you want. So I actually think this is a neat feature, and it definitely adds to the gameplay variety because each path halfway through the stage then changes the scenery, the enemies that you're going to fight, potentially the number of power-ups you're going to encounter, etc. So, and then it also changes the boss. So even though, let's say in a good example of that would be Tripod Sardine in Beta Zone. Tripod Sardine has different behavior depending on whether you go top path or bottom path. I find the bottom path Tripod Sardine to be slightly easier than top path because there's a little bit less dodging you have to do. Whereas top path, you've got these laser things that will zone in on your position and you have to move a little bit in order to move out of the way. So it's an interesting mechanic because it makes you determine which one you want to learn in order to best route and take out that particular form of a boss. So
I definitely agree with you. I think it was very welcome, and I enjoy it too. It just feels like sometimes I got lost and ended up on the cover of Phalanx. Just out there with some sort of banjo guy. I'm like, where did I go? Did I take a left turn at Albuquerque, or what happened here?
Yeah, this can ruin your complete run because you have to encounter a boss you aren't prepared for. So, if you choose the wrong way by accident, you most of the times end up dying at the boss fight.
Right. Well, and the thing that I think is neat about this is that that's actually how I discovered that bottom path dual horn or Tripod Sardine rather, is actually easier. And so that was the thing that I thought was kind of a nice little surprise, is that I accidentally took bottom path one time in stage beta, and then when I got to the boss and realized, oh, this is an easier version of this boss, that's what I'm going to do. So then that changed my route, because that allowed me to be a little bit more consistent in getting through Tripod Sardine. And so for me, it was a nice surprise.
Yeah, right. And plus, you don't have to fight the spider kind of things, those crawlers on the upper route,
yes.
Because they also take a lot of hits, and they're pretty strong.
Yes. Yeah, the spider things in that stage, for sure. If you take the upper path versus the lower, because I want to say it's the lower path where you get the spiders, if I remember correctly.
In Zone Beta, the spiders are in the upper path.
Okay, yes.
Yep, they're in the upper path.
Yes.
There's two of them right in a row.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, the easiest way to deal with them is just to alpha beam them, because the alpha beam obliterates them right away.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw in Icarus's route. So then one other neat point about the game too is that every every stage, of course, has the Greek letter designation, but then every stage sort of has a subtitle. And each one of these starts with the letter G, which of course ties into the name of the game and the fact that you're piloting the Silverhawk Genesis. So it's kind of a neat way to bring it all together in a subtle but interesting way.
Yeah, that's funny.
So let's talk about the graphics.
Yeah, the graphics, this is the series' first foray into 3D, which I think was pulled off rather well. Even today, if you look at these 3D graphics, they don't look like they are abstract or is warped or anything. It's something that's very easy to come back to. I didn't find myself getting any type of like, hey, this seems a little off or anything until maybe one of the stages, the backgrounds, where the background wasn't moving quite as the way the action felt, and it made it feel a little bit off-putting. You know, like sort of you're on a moving maybe a little bit too fast, like an on-rail shooter, and that could happen. It seems to happen in like an arcade game. But for the most part, everything seemed to line up and look good, and several years later here in 2022, it still looks great.
Yeah.
And you can't say that much about other 3D shooters. I mean, look at, what was the third one that they ported to the PlayStation 1? Was it Galaxian 3 or was it I'm trying to think. What's that 3D one that they ported? Was it Galaxian 3?
Oh, are you talking about Galaga Dimension one. Earth?
Was that the one, the 3D one that they ported? It only came out on the PlayStation 1 and the arcades, and it was this huge thing on the arcades.
Well, that was Galaxian 3, but I didn't think that actually got a home port because it was a Laserdisc game. I think it came out on the PlayStation.
I could be wrong. I think it actually came out on the PlayStation 1. I'll have to take a look.
Oh.
But regardless, the graphics really hold up, and you can't go wrong playing this on the HD port or even going back to the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, the thing that strikes me about these games now is if you think about G-Darius or Raystorm, Ray Crisis, Einhander, these early 3D graphics shoot-em-ups on the PlayStation, is there's enough abstraction in what you're looking at in these kinds of games because they're all using fictional types of things, you know, flying robot space fish and odd lasers and weapons and things, that there's enough of a layer of abstraction and suspension of disbelief that you already have with that kind of universe that it's easier to continually play these kinds of games all these years later with less good graphics and still think they look relatively good as compared to something that's more realistic. Now, I myself still have a bit of an affection for original PlayStation era 3D, and there are still a lot of games on that hardware that I enjoy the way they look, even though I know objectively speaking they're not great. But I think these games age better, and particularly G-Darius has aged better than much of the original PlayStation library. Again, because of that, the fact that you're in these fantastical settings using crazy weapons against ridiculous and strange enemies, and so there's already enough of that in there that it sort of helps get past whatever the low poly 3D is, and helps the game still look better than maybe it ought to at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, your Bubsy 3D love aside, I completely agree. I think that if we were to take its contemporary R-Type Delta, which has still got great gameplay, it hasn't aged as well as G-Darius, right? It looks a little bit more simplistic than what you normally have on there. And in Shmup Junkie pointed this out in his video, right? It doesn't take much to upscale this to make this look great. He ran it on maybe just under a little bit better settings on the emulator, and it looked amazing. There wasn't a lot of work that needed to be done. And I think that really benefits from, as you mentioned, the brighter colors, the great use of the art style. And the other thing that they did with this is the majority of the stuff was not in space. They didn't fall victim to the space trap like they did with G-Darius Twin, right, where it felt like everything was the same scrolling background. And that's one of the things that I love about the Konami game, and especially Salamander that we played earlier this year, or Life Force, or Life Force Salamander, whatever way you want to pronounce that title, because it flip-flops so many times, is you get that great variety, that feeling that you're going through this living, breathing world, or this living, breathing organism. It's really well pulled off. And by extension, the bosses, the sense of scale in that. The first time you see Eclipse Eye, you just see its eye just flash out in Eclipse the Sun. I mean, it's aptly named, but still so well done to give you feel like you're doing epic battles, fighting for your life or for your Tex-Mexian, whatever have you, in order to defeat these things. And the fact that they're using giant lasers to do this too, it's very anime-esque, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find myself playing the original version quite a lot with the original graphics. And I think if you got some nostalgia for the PS1 and early 3D era, this game aged pretty well.
Yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts on that, because you mentioned this was your favorite shooting game. So
yeah, right.
Is the visual presentation of that something that hooked you when you first played this game?
Yeah, absolutely. When I played G-Darius for the first time, this was on a PlayStation 1 demo disc back in 1999. And I bought this demo disc because of a demo of Tony Hawk skateboarding. And yeah, G-Darius was the other game on this disc. So when I played this, it took me really by surprise, because at this time I haven't played any shooting games for years. And 2D graphics and gameplay were slowly vanishing from mainstream because 3D was all around. And yeah, a 2D game with polygonal graphics was kind of unusual to me. So it really impressed me with its speed and sheer firepower and this 3D or 2.5D optics, and that was absolutely something that hooked me right away.
Yeah, I remember when I first bought G-Darius on the PlayStation, I was really impressed with how it looked. Now, keeping in mind, of course, that I was playing on a 27-inch CRT, had my PlayStation hooked to it through S-Video, and was playing it in a manner that was similar to what I would have experienced had I ever seen this in the arcade, in terms of size of monitor and decent video quality, comparatively speaking. And yeah, I mean, the visual presentation did impress me. Number one, because of the cool set pieces. Number two, because of how much there is going on. And number three, how readable it is. Despite the move to 3D, there are some cases where you move to 3D and then there's so much thrown at you that a game like this can be difficult to read. You don't see the bullets, you don't see the enemies coming in, you don't know the attacks or whatever. But I still feel like this game is visually very readable, which makes it a lot more fun to play than something else from that era that might be less readable or less fun to play because it's just harder to make out what's going on. And there are examples like that. There's some less ideal 3D shoot-'em-ups that can occasionally have situations where you get lost in the background, or in the various enemy bullets and explosions. But I feel like G-Darius remains an easy game to pick up and play because you don't... I never felt like you got lost in all the commotion.
Yeah, that's right. I often have this problems with other 3D shmups, but I never had this kind of problems with G-Darius. You can keep track of everything that's going on, and it's very readable, as you say, and it works pretty well.
Moving on to the sound, this is an area that I'm particularly fond of. The soundtrack was composed by Hisayoshi Ogura, now formerly of Zuntata. He also did the soundtrack for Darius Gaiden and the classic arcade game Ninja Warriors. One of the things I noted about the soundtrack, even early on when I played, is that it's a little bit non-standard, in the sense that in your typical shooting game, you have stage theme, boss theme, stage theme, boss theme, and sometimes the boss theme is unique to each boss or each level. Sometimes it's the same boss theme until maybe you get to the last boss. But in this game, it takes a much different approach, where the themes are composed for the game, and so certain stages will have a stage theme and a boss theme. Other stages will have a stage theme that carries through the boss. Or, for example, in the case of Fire Fossil, in that stage, you go through and the stage theme carries into the first part of the boss fight, and then at some point, once that theme is over, then the music switches, and it's a different theme for what is effectively the second half of that boss fight. So it's a very different and interesting approach. The other thing, of course, is that the soundtrack itself is, much like a lot of Zuntata's mid to late 90s work, fairly esoteric. The melodies are different, the electronic beats and underpinning of all of it is very unique, and I don't know what it is. I can't really explain it, but I love this soundtrack. And to me, Zuntata's best period was the 90s. I know there's a lot of stuff that came before that they did was good. You know, Darius and Darius 2 soundtracks are good. Ninja Warriors, of course, from Ogura. But realistically, I think from right around Grid Seeker from 92 that we played earlier in the podcast, up through G-Darius and Ray Crisis is, to me, Zuntata's best period of music that had the most cool, unique, interesting soundtracks that they ever put out.
Yeah, I love the soundtrack too. It doesn't have the usual catchy tunes, but more of an ambient vibe, I'd say, and it serves the game pretty well. Yeah,
and I wouldn't classify the tunes as not catchy necessarily, but they're not as immediate as even its predecessor Darius Gaiden or the other Darius games and things like that, or even let's say the Ray series. At least the first two games, I would say maybe have a bit more immediacy in the melodies and so forth. This is one of those games that I think when you play it, the melodies kind of slowly get ingrained as you play, and then the whole vibe that the game has just sort of, I don't know, it just works. I'm not sure how else to explain it. What do you think about the soundtrack, Addicted?
I like the soundtrack. It's not something that I'll be humming here, but it works very well. It's not distracting either. And I wouldn't put it in meh territory or serviceable either. It's just it's different, right? It's not dealing with the techno vibe, or it's not overly bombastic. It's really well to keep you engaged, but doesn't distract from the action. And the same thing goes for the sound effects too. It's not. I know that we're talking about G-Darius here, but it's not in Raiden, right? Raiden, as I'm shooting the gun, the main Vulcankin on that thing, I swear in the Super Raiden or the TurboGrafx port, it sounds like it's popcorn. Right? The enemy sound effects are really good, but it just feels underpowered when I'm shooting stuff. None of that happens here. The sound effects all work well. They sound like they do when it's not blown out on the other end like we did with Steel Vampire, where everything sounded like someone's speakers had just overdone it.
Right.
So it strikes a nice balance. And I guess the fact that it just goes along with the flow without being too noticeable means they've done a really well job. I don't have the inkling to just get up and just start mashing away at buttons and destroying stuff like I do in Thunder Force 4 when that soundtrack kicks in, or Lightning Force. But at the same time, I never felt myself turning it down or saying, what the heck was that? Like with the alarm clock wake up noise in Odomedius Excellent for the warning. It does a very well job in keeping you engaged and keeping you playing without reminding you that you are playing a video game, right? It gives a good experience.
Yeah. I think atmosphere is the word.
Atmosphere, yes.
Right, yeah.
So now, I want you to take center stage on this, Zoydo, with discussion about scoring, because you actually posted a whole bunch of really good information on the forum thread. So I'd like to walk through this with you.
Okay. So scoring. Of course, you get points for everything you shoot, needless to say. But just like in all the other Darius games, the enemies in G-Darius appear in formations you have to destroy, and if you can take out a whole formation of enemies, you get a point bonus for this, and the game shows you exactly how much points you get for destroying the whole formation. And there are certain conditions for multiplying this bonus you get from destroying a formation. For example, you get a double bonus for every enemy formation you destroy by using your secondary weapon from captured enemies. So this is usually the green laser bullets that are shot by the enemies you captured and you carry along with you. Some of the captured enemies just run into the enemy formations or other enemies, so you get a double bonus for enemies or formations that are taken out by enemies you captured.
Yeah, and one thing I want to note on that I found interesting is you get the 2 times bonus for the formation itself if you destroy the final enemy in the formation by utilizing your captured enemy's weapon. Now, of course, you get twice the points for every enemy that you destroy with a captured enemy, but the actual formation bonus is doubled as well by only having to take out that final enemy with the enemy bullet. So it's kind of an interesting way of almost allowing you to get double the benefit from using captured enemies to destroy your foes.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is kind of cool. So if you're learning the game and trying to learn scoring, and you're trying to get your score up, but you're having trouble where you can't take out every enemy in a formation with a captured enemy's bullets or fire, you can still at least get that enemy formation bonus by destroying the last one with an enemy bullet. And so it's still kind of it's an intermediate way, I guess, of helping to increase your score.
Right, yeah. So you get a threefold bonus for destroying an enemy formation by using a bomb. As you already said, you can use the capture button to detonate an enemy that you captured before. So this gives you a bomb effect that's not screen clearing, but affects a certain area of the screen. So every enemy formation that flies into this or gets taken out by this gives you a 3 times bonus. And you get a 4 times bonus for every enemy formation you destroy by using the alpha beam. So if you feed a captured enemy to your alpha beam and take out enemy formations with your beam, you get the 4-fold bonus. And you can clean the screen pretty good with your laser. So this is pretty effective for scoring. And you can increase that bonus if you use a captured captain to initiate your alpha beam. And same thing as before, every enemy formation that you can take out with the alpha beam you got from the mid boss gives you 6 times the bonus.
And I want to say in Delta, if I remember correctly, if you can use the captain once you move from outer space into the sort of space station tunnel kind of a thing, if you use the captain as your alpha beam, there's a section that has a ton of enemies, and you can really rack up your score by using the alpha beam in that section to take out several formations.
Right, this is pretty valuable because it's almost impossible to carry the mid-boss through the whole way until the boss, and so this is exactly the section where you want to sacrifice your captured captain to increase your score.
Yeah.
Okay, then you get a bonus for destroying the boss using your alpha beam, and the bonus increases when you kill the boss during a beam battle. And the more beams or the more counters you rack up, the higher the bonus. And if you use a captured mid-boss for your alpha beam, this even increases the score a little bit further. And this also affects your technical rank.
Yeah, and again, if you... the example I'll go back to again is Fire Fossil. During that fight, actually the mid-boss or the captain of that level will come out of Fire Fossil during one phase of its attack. So if you capture that captain during that phase and then save that, and you're able to keep that captain alive during the next couple of phases, you can use it to then counter that final beam duel portion. I was never able to do that, but I'm assuming there's a way to make it happen.
That's pretty easy. You can use the safe spots. When Fire Fossil is coming in from the left side, you can sit down in the right lower corner, and it doesn't damage you with this flamethrower attack. And after this, you can sit right. How to explain? You can use the safe spot right beside the boss when he shoots these laser fans.
Right.
And with the mid-boss sitting right behind you, if it hasn't taken much damage before, it can take the whole section, and you can use it for the alpha beam. Maybe you want to suck it in to initiate your beam before the boss shoots its scales at you.
Oh.
this is a tricky passage, and if you initiate the beam before that and just dodge the scales, you can counter the beam right after that.
Okay, I'll have to give that a try next time.
Yeah, it's relatively easy if you use the safe spots, and the mid-boss can take enough damage to go through the phase, and it's very doable.
Nice.
There's also a bonus for saving the captain throughout a boss fight. So if you pick up a captain and finish the boss fight without the captain dying, you get 100,000 points bonus, which isn't this valuable because it's very tricky to do this because, as we already said, the bosses have a lot of hit points, and it's pretty tricky to maneuver the mid-boss through all the patterns, and usually you get a higher bonus for laser battles or beam battles, or defeating the boss with the laser. And I only managed to do this in stage 1.
Right. Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess this isn't really an option because, as I said, the points you get through beam battles or beam counters are much more valuable than saving the captain, and I guess you lose points this way, so I wouldn't do it.
Right.
After defeating the final boss, you get a 1 million bonus for every extent left, and 300,000 for each captain you captured on your way through the game. So you want to catch as much captains as possible, and if you want to go for score, it's recommended to no miss the game because 3 million bonus is quite a number.
Yeah.
We had the 3 times bonus. Every boss has destructible parts that give you extra points, so you can take out the boss piece by piece, so to say. And the M2 gadgets give you information about the destructible parts of the bosses, so if you want to max out your points at the boss fight, you want to take out all the parts you can destroy.
Yeah, and I think that the game does a good job of teaching you that in the first boss fight with Eclipse Eye, because you can very easily take out one of the large scales on the side, and then also the eye in one of the early phases of the fight. And so it kind of shows you that organically as you play. And this has been a staple of the Darius series from the beginning, allowing you to shoot off the fins of the different fish or legs of the crab boss and that sort of thing. So it's cool that they're carrying that forward and kind of allowing the series to continue to have that as part of its legacy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it almost it screams action figure battle damage, right?
Yeah. One thing that I did not put in the notes, but I wanted to touch on, was the technical rank, because you mentioned it, Zoydo.
Yeah, right.
There are a ton of different ranks in the game that you can achieve based on different things. And of course, some of it is based on scoring, some of it is based on overall performance, how far you get, etc. I'm curious as to if you know more about the technical rank, because when I did my clear, I ended up getting the Silver Hawk rank, and I want to say that the Golden Hawk is the highest rank, correct?
Right, yeah. Golden Hawk is the highest rank, and Silver Hawk is... I never got a Silver Hawk technical rank, I guess, with clearing the game. I got Silver Hawk with game overs, but never with clearing the game, so it's quite tricky to get a good rank, because there are a lot of conditions you have to fulfill to get a Golden Hawk or Silver Hawk rank. And I can tell a few things about that if you wish.
Yeah.
Okay. So I noticed, I wrote down the conditions that affect the technical rank. And the first thing is the enemy kill ratio. So you have to destroy everything or as much as possible to get a high rank. Then the enemy formation kill ratio. So it depends how much whole enemy formations you have destroyed. Then this is interesting. There is a boss hit accuracy ratio. So during the boss battles, you want to stop firing when there's nothing to shoot or to damage, because the game keeps track of how many shots you fired that missed their target or missed everything. So, sorry. Yeah, you if you want a high rank, you have to control your fire. You can't just laser through everything. You have to stop firing when there's nothing to shoot. And that's tricky sometimes because yeah. And I have to read through this. Yeah, right. As I said before, the best boss final hit, so destroy the boss with a high level of an alpha beam as possible. So you get a high rank for killing bosses with an alpha beam or beam counter, and the higher the beam counter level, the higher, or the more it increases your technical rank. Then there is a captured enemy use efficiency. So you have to manage your captured enemies a bit. The game keeps track of how you use them, and if they got destroyed by enemy fire, this lowers your rank. So you want to pick them up and feed them to your alpha beam or bomb them strategically to get bonus or to do damage, and all the enemies you captured that got destroyed by enemy fire will lower the rank. Then there are points for mileage, so how far you get in the game. The further you get, the higher the rank. Then the use of continues. For every continue you used, you lose technical rank. And the rank is also affected by the power-up level. So the more power-ups you pick up and the higher you level up your weapons, the more increases your rank. And of course, the number of lost ships also affects your rank. So if you want a high rank, you have to no miss the game or lose as try to lose ships at all. Sorry. The more ships you lose, the lower gets your rank. And that's pretty much it. I hope this was understandable.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I'm going to award Guru here the rank of Parrot Dog for his efforts, I think, in streaming. So I think that works well. But no, I think that some of them to me were pretty funny. Like Iron Duck, I think was one of them. I know that Golden Hawk was the highest, of course, because they're Silver Hawk ships. What were some? There's Swan in there. What were some of the other animals?
Well, we already know that Louis Gossett Jr., his plane went down, so he can only ever achieve Iron Eagle rank.
Oh, jeez. All right. No, we're not going to do a Shmup Club watches. All right.
No, yeah, there was Duck, Eagle, Swan, Condor. Condor is one of the somewhat higher ranks, I think. I know I got Golden Condor once or twice. I can't think of any other birds.
Yeah, Duck, Owl, Crow, Swan, Eagle, Condor, and Hawk.
Owl, that's right. So no albatross.
No albatross, no. I guess the highest rank I ever got with the clear was Iron Hawk.
Okay.
Still, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much better than I could do at the moment. I think, as I say, you had Iron Eagle or, I don't know, Golden Duck. I forget the one, but if I didn't remember, it wasn't worth mentioning.
Yeah. So, my Silverhawk ranking must have been I just hit the right combination of all the elements that you described, Zoydo, to where I must have had enough captured enemy use efficiency, and it was a 1 miss. That particular run was a 1 miss, and I was full power, I think, by the time I got to the final boss fight. So, yeah,
that's pretty good.
I mean, I must have just hit enough of the right things that I made it happen. Well, we've kind of shared our thoughts here. We do have a couple of thoughts from the ARFGen community. Most of what's in the thread was Zoydo and myself going back and forth. We did have Gollum pipe up and say, I won't have time to join for this month, but I just want to say, this is the very best Kirby game. And you get a billion jillion bombs in this game, so don't forget to use them. And I guess in a way that's true. I mean, a billion jillion's a bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, with the capture balls, because you can detonate enemies, obviously, strategically that gives you a lot more that you can do to get out of hairy situations.
Yeah, I had to laugh very hard at this quote because I never thought of it as the best Kirby game, but it's pretty accurate. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, considering that Kirby allows you to capture enemies and then use them as fuel or weaponry or stealing their powers, kind of a thing. Yeah, it's very similar to that. You know, you could also say that in some ways G-Darius is a Kirby game then.
Yeah.
And then just briefly, Fomacho mentioned, going to have to watch some of your videos and hit the books on all your strategies because so far I've only gotten to the Stage 2 boss. I want to finish the month strong though, so let's see how much I can improve. Well, thank you to everyone who participated alongside us. I think it was kind of the MetalFRO and Zoydo show for most of the month, but that's okay. You know, some months are like that. You know, even when you have a decent amount of people participating, not everybody gets to play as much as they want because the month gets busy, and that happens. Now, on to the high scores. As per usual, Zoydo, you took the high score with 20,822,220 points, and that was a Lambda run, right?
That was the Lambda run, right?
Yeah. And I did the same Lambda run, or similar, and ended up with 16,581,480 points, which I thought was pretty decent for as many years as it's been since I have actively played this game, and kind of just watching Icarus's Lambda route run and trying to mimic that as much as I can, and then flailing a fair bit throughout the month to do so.
Yeah, but that's pretty good. Congrats on that. To get a clear in this time isn't easy, I'd say. G-Darius still is a very hard game, and yeah, you have to put a lot of effort in it to learn the boss fights, and so getting a clear is very cool. Congrats.
Yeah, I think part of it is I credit fed my way through the game multiple times on the PlayStation over the years, and just a degree of coming back to the game still understanding the mechanics, and having played it a fair bit before certainly helped. And again, watching Icarus's run really helped because it gave me some ideas on a couple of the trickier sections to route through that I didn't have to fall on my face several times playing to know how to deal with those segments. I just sort of kind of went in with that knowledge.
Yeah, Icarus's run was my source of information for the game when I cleared it for the first time too. This was a few years back. And nowadays there are a lot of videos online that are pretty good for learning the game. But there weren't much videos around a few years ago. And Icarus's video helped me a lot with it.
Right.
And the stage selection mode for G-Darius HD is a huge bonus too for the game, because the PS1 version only has the versus boss fight mode, and it's still pretty tough to learn the bosses on your routes with the versus boss mode. So the stage selection mode or training mode is very good for this game.
Yeah, I noticed when I was practicing toward the end game, I was of course using save states in the M2 port, and I was having difficulty because I had a save state I created just before Lightning Coronatus in Lambda, and that save state had the captain with me, and having the captain with me was part of my initial strategy, and making sure that I had the captain so that I could do an early alpha beam against the boss to damage it a bunch was part of that strategy. But then as I went back and was trying to practice stage 4, I was having trouble actually reaching the boss with the captain in tow. And so it was difficult to sort of get over that hump of getting to the boss with the captain along for the ride so that I could actually reach that place where all of my boss practice, had paid off.
Yeah.
So final thoughts. What do we have to say to kind of sum up our G-Darius experience?
Okay. For me personally, it's still the best game of the Darius series. As already mentioned, it's my favorite shooting game in general. And I like it a bit more than the other Darius games because the level design is a bit more diversified than in the other games, and the stages have a high recognition value. And the 5-stage layout of the game makes it a bit more compact compared to the other Darius games too, which usually have 7 stages. And I really hope, maybe with the success of the Cosmic Revelation and Collection, and the recent shmup boom, that Taito maybe surprises us with a new entry into the series sometime soon. This would be cool.
That would be interesting, although I would hope they would go a little bit back toward the traditional model, then go the Darius Burst Cosmic or Chronicle Saviors route, and just inundate us with 39 variants of the same stage with different goals and things like that. I would like to see a really well designed, complete stage 1 to stage whatever experience that we can really sink our teeth into. And then if they want to do extra content and DLC beyond that, that's fine. But I think if they could come back with a base game that is as strong as this, or nearly as strong as this, then we would all be winners.
Yeah.
What about you, Addicted?
Me? Well, I think that my glowing praise throughout this entire podcast has given away my impressions, but I was really impressed by the way this looks and this plays. I think that they did enough to add to the formula without changing what it is at the core of Darius. And I think that the graphics really hold up well. It's music, and yeah, I would have to say it probably is the very best Kirby game. I think that anybody who, even if you got the Mr. Core on this, give it a shot. Definitely play it and you'd be surprised. This is one of the games where I felt like people had high expectations going in, told me this was a great game, and I think it delivered.
Yeah, for myself, I've long been a fan of this game, and I kind of came to the Darius series a bit late in some ways. I mean, I remember, I think I mentioned on our Darius Twin episode that I played that at a friend's house when he first rented a Super Nintendo when we were kids, and that was my first experience with the series. And then it wasn't until years later when I bought a Saturn and then got Darius Gaiden, kind of on the recommendation of folks on the Shmups forum, that I started to really dig in. And then G-Darius, of course, came after that, and just kind of solidified my enjoyment and respect for the series. I vacillate frequently between G-Darius and Darius Gaiden as to which game I like more and which soundtrack I like more. Having put in the time this month and looking at the sheer depth of this game and how much there is, I'm going to say right now G-Darius has the edge. There's still aspects of Gaiden that I like a lot, and who knows, when we actually go to play Gaiden for the Shmup Club and for the podcast, I may change my tune again. But right now, I'm giving G-Darius the edge because there's just so much to it, and it's so deep and layered that it really has a lot of dividends that it can pay out if you put in the time and through all the multiple stages and multiple mid-stage paths. There's just a lot here, and I think not only the sheer amount of content, but also how well executed everything is, that it really stands out as a pinnacle, if not the pinnacle, of this era of early 3D shooting games. So I personally think this is a high watermark for that era of shooting games, particularly when so much was moving in the Danmaku direction, with Cave kind of going into the Dodonpachi Esperade sort of direction. This continuing to fly the traditional shooting game flag, I think, really helped exemplify that there was still life left in the genre from the old guard, and that there was still a reason to keep coming back to this kind of game.
I was sort of thinking on this as, how about this for a tagline? Taito, your seafood or sea-based entertainment since 1978. Well, you think about it, they have a legacy, right? Not only did they do the Darius, but they did Space Invaders, which was based upon sea enemies.
That's
like
true.
octopus and stuff. So, is Space Invaders take the place inside the Darius universe? Or does Darius take place in the Space Invaders universe?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Is this the prequel we've all been waiting for?
Well, all that said, let's talk about what we've got coming next.
Coming next, in June, as we talk about Darius and seafood and sushi sashimi. Oh boy, I always have trouble pronouncing that one. We are in the month of Thunder and Lightning with Raiden.
Yes.
We have the arcade version, the Genesis version, which is known as Raiden Trad, the Super Nintendo version published by Micronics that no one should play, the TurboGrafx version with sort of neat popcorn sound effects, but the Super CD version is pretty cool. It's got a good orchestral soundtrack. The Jaguar version, and let's see, the Lynx, which is pretty good, and of course on Switch, PC, and mobile. So boot up your gallantry and join us as we make our way through Raiden 1. I have to say I was a little bit disappointed. I had forgotten there was no toothpaste laser in this one, so that's okay. The gallantry will definitely get you far. And this game, the original Raiden, kicks off our Summer of Raiden series. So next month it will be Raiden Fighters, which came out on the arcade, Xbox 360, PC, and mobile.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into Raiden Fighters in July because it's not a game that I have any experience with, and so I know it plays a lot differently than the original Raiden series games. So it'll be interesting to see how it contrasts, particularly because, spoiler alert, the Raiden Fighters was actually not supposed to have been a Raiden game originally. So that'll be a fun little detail we'll get into as we talk about that game.
Yeah, another fun little detail. All that's required to make it a Raiden game is just coffee and crystals. No, I'm definitely looking forward to talking about some of the variations, because I tried the Super Nintendo port and it 1942 PTSD all over again. And the Genesis version was surprisingly better, but yeah, there's some interesting things done with this. It's almost reminds me of Fantasy Zone, where there's never been. I think, Fantasy Zone, where there's so much differentiation or differences between the ports that they really are worth all talking about. And Gradius, there was a couple, but this game in particular, everyone's got their own little take on it. Mm-hmm. Looking forward to talking about that game in a couple weeks here.
All right.
We'd also like to thank Ed of Studio Mudprints and Bullet Heaven, also known as just Mudprints now, I believe, for the logo. Like to thank everybody who repped a shirt or bought a shirt or found a shirt somewhere and is wearing it. I'd like to thank Kogusu for the intro and outro music. I'd like to thank everybody at RF Generation Playcast and Collector Cast. I'd like to thank Zoydo for coming on here in this hot mess of a podcast and helping us out so much. And I'd like to thank MetalFRO for streaming and always entertaining with his parrot dogs. Yeah.
And I have to give a couple of personal shout-outs. First and foremost to you, Addicted, for graciously hosting me for a little bit when I made my trip to the Chicago area here this last weekend. And, getting together and finally getting to meet in person and, spend a little bit of time hanging out and getting a meal and so forth. And
I have to say, I'm surprised you survived 5 hours without saying, I need to get out of here. This guy is nuts.
No, I'm good. I mean, I had fun. And so I'm glad we got to do that. I'll definitely have to plan a longer trip next time so that I can take in more of the area and hopefully, hang out with you a little bit more and do that.
Next time you're going to do the burger challenge, right? You're going to eat, was it 4 pounds of beef or something within 4 minutes?
Oh, yeah, I don't remember what it was. But I did conquer the burger that the waiter told me I would not conquer, so I felt pretty good about that.
The Slayer.
That's right. I also have to give a huge shout out to DJ Psycho M1. Twitch streamer extraordinaire who very graciously hosted me, had me come over and hang out, and got to go check out Prince Arcades in the area with him, as well as Galloping Ghost Arcade. Shout out to D Tungsten, who we met up with there at Galloping Ghost, and who shared some Darius and Darius 2 action with me. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, DJ Psycho M1 was really, really very hospitable, and then he and I went back to his house then in the evening, and we actually did a stream on his Twitch channel, a sort of shmup battle, if you will. And so we played some Raiden, we played some Armed Police Batrider, some Dompach, some one of the games I picked was Vapor Trail, and then we finished it off with Battle Back Raid. And that was a fun experience, and I definitely want to do that again. And so a huge thank you to DJ Psycho M1 for your hospitality and generosity in hosting me and taking me around the area, and just how you helped to make the weekend special. And so it was a really fun trip, and I'm glad I got to go. And we're definitely going to have to do that again, and hopefully a longer trip next time, so I can see more of Galloping Ghost and do more. And of course, again, to Zoydo for being willing to come on and record with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking me.
Okay. Anything else that we need to mention or touch on before we close up shop?
Yeah, I actually wanted to say thank you to both of you guys for putting the effort in every month and bring a high-quality podcast to the scene completely for free.
Oh.
I'm not sure about the high quality, but thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I mean, it's good to know that our efforts are appreciated, and we don't always get a lot of feedback on the podcast, so I'm glad to hear that people are enjoying it, because as I've mentioned before, there are times when it feels like we're out here talking into the void, but I know that we get a decent amount of likes and retweets every time I post about a new episode, and there are always certain people like DJ Psycho M1 and D Tungsten and you Zoydo and others who mention that they listen to the podcast on a pretty regular basis, and so yeah, it's always very appreciated.
Definitely, and as long as we've got one passionate person listening, we'll keep doing this.
Cool. And I have to say, I really like the new format with the news section and the few things you added recently. That's pretty valuable.
Yeah, if anybody's got suggestions out there, please let us know, and we'll add them in. Always looking for feedback.
No, I think it's great because it's really hard to keep track of everything that's happening around shmups recently, and it's nice to have a monthly summary, what's new, what's coming, and the news segment is really cool.
Yeah, and that was a suggestion from the community, and so a big thank you to those who have provided us feedback and gave us that idea to kind of approach it from that direction. Because I realize that you can go out online and all of this stuff is out on Twitter and other places, but I think it's nice to sort of compile a lot of those things together, pun intended, in this format, so that when we do the podcast, it sort of allows for a little bit of a time capsule effect as well, because these podcasts are always timed based on, we play the game 1 month and then we podcast about it the next month. So all the news items that you're getting from the podcast as we do this now are all based around the stuff that's happening around the time that we're recording and in the time leading up to that. And so I think it's a good way to sort of also document some of these things so that over the years as websites die or tweets get deleted or buried so far in a thread or a feed that you can't find them anymore, that there's still some mention of these things, even the small little Dojin and homebrew games and things that we can hopefully share and bring to light.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe in another 5 years, Dispatch Games will actually ship something.
I'll tell you what, that's going to be, if that happens, when that happens, and I physically get those things in my hand, that is going to be the top news item for the subsequent podcast, because I will get to say it finally happened.
Yeah, I mean, we've already, Natsuki Chronicles is already coming out, right? And that was, 2 years ago?
Oh, right. Yeah, the physical version from First Press Games, I think.
Yeah. The fact that First Press Games is already Press 2, they've already beat out Dispatch.
Right. Alrighty. Well, I think that's all we've got. So, we will say thank you for listening, and we will catch you next month.
Thank you.